Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Conservation Commission will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner: www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Call the meeting to order, 7 o'clock. First thing up, notice of intent, lot 5, Granule / Brigham Road, map 50, lot 51. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020, at 7 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The Commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at Lot 5, Granule Road, previously part of 26 Granule Road, map 50, lot 51, for the applicant Whitney Street Home Builders, LLC. The project description is construction of a single-family home, septic, and associated improvements, and installation of an impervious barrier to contain breakneck from the disposal area. This will be a virtual meeting in accordance with the orders issued by the governor during the current state of emergency. There will be no in-person attendance by the public. Persons may attend and participate in the hearing by following the Zoom link at the southborough.com remote meeting and to review meeting material.
So Wayne Bellick is here from Land Design Collaborative. If you want to, Wayne, if you want to do a brief intro, and I'll bring the plan up. Wayne, you're on mute. I don't know if you are trying to talk. Maybe. Wayne, are you there? You should be able to unmute yourself. I guess in the meantime, do the commissioners have any questions? This is kind of in line with the other 2 lots that we've been talking about.
While we're waiting for Wayne to unmute or whatever he's got to do, Matt, do you want to give us some insight update and just your review of this?
So, as Melissa said, this is fairly consistent with the other 2 lots they've proposed. I did review it, had a few fairly minor comments. Melissa, can you bring the plan up so we can see the site a little bit more? Yeah, that's better. And I don't know, I think they had submitted a revised plan. Is this the revised plan, Melissa, or is this the original plan?
This might be the original one.
Okay. So one of my comments was basically on the location of the septic system. And this doesn't seem to show it, so maybe this is a different one. They had the proposed leach field closer to the wetland boundary and the reserve area, yeah, that one, and the reserve area away from the wetland. And I guess my question was, could the reserve area be left closer to the wetland and basically undisturbed? And I don't know, Russ, you can probably answer that better than I don't know if you have a reserve area, if it has to be cleared and graded, or if it can just be left. But that was one of my questions, was just kind of flip-flopping that to potentially allow pulling that disturbance away from the buffer zone, at least for the initial construction. They are proposing a roof drain infiltration system, like they added on some of the other lots. And I just had a comment of asking for a detail on what the system was going to look like and any calculations as far as the sizing. They are proposing, similar to the other lots, sort of a boulder wall to prevent lawn creep that's shown on the plan. But didn't really have a note kind of calling out exactly what it was. So I thought, just to make sure everybody was on the same page, that it have a little note attached to it. That was about it. There's no, as far as I know, there's no DEP file number yet for it. So we'd have to wait on that, and potentially some minor plan revisions based on my comments. So that was about it.
So Matt, I'm not able to answer your question. And I kind of suggest maybe we talk to the Board of Health and just throw that out there. Why can't we use the upland part first?
Yeah, that was my thought. It just seemed, why build it close to the wetland if you could build it further away? And if someday you need to build it closer, if it fails, then so be it. But
Right. Well, the other scenario as well is on a repair today, sometimes you just have to dig it out and put it back where it was. So why can't we use the upland area?
I know I did get a DEP number this morning, but Wayne did have some edits to make, so he was asking to continue this until the next meeting, and so that's one of the questions that we can bring up that he can address in the meantime.
Yeah, it looks like in the chat, he's unable to connect to audio for whatever reason. So, all right, so since we need to continue, why don't we just do that? If he can hear us, then hopefully he can take that note. If he can't, then let's make sure we get that back to him, that feedback. All right, so do I hear a motion to continue?
So move.
A second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Melissa?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith, or sorry, Ben's not here. Pete,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
And Wayne, I'm gonna try and get you the phone number to call in. Just give me 1 second.
He has it next to as well. All right, I'll go ahead and read it anyways while you're doing that. Okay, this is 28 Granule Road. It's a continued notice of intent. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30th, 2020 at 7 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 28 Granule off Granule Road, previously part of 26 Granule Road, map 50, lot 51. For the applicant, Whitney Street Home Builders, LLC. The project description is site grading, deck construction, and land restoration. And while we're waiting for him to try to connect, Matt, do you have any updates or comments on this particular lot?
I think Melissa, did he submit another revised plan today?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to really look at it because it just came in today.
Actually, not for this lot, just for lot 4. Or am I thinking that backwards? I think it's just lot 4 that had the revised plans today. Oops.
So I think this one was probably in pretty good shape. I think we were mainly just waiting for the file number, if I recall.
Yeah, and we got it. So Wayne, I sent you a chat. It should have the number. You just gotta tell me what number to look out for.
I think he had made a few edits before the last meeting on my comment, so it was really just the DEP file number.
Anybody else have any comments or questions about this application? It takes silence as a no. Is there anybody from the public that wants to comment on this?
I don't see anyone.
Don't see anybody? Okay. Is there any reason we need to continue this? We can close this, can we?
Nope.
Okay, do I hear a motion to close this hearing for notice of intent application?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Geyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes, Sherry,
He's on mute.
Yes, sorry.
Passamato.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Lot 4, Granule Road. In accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 in the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020 at 7 p.m. by a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at Lot 4 off Granule Road, previously part of 26 Granule Road, map 50, lot 51 for the applicant Whitney Street Home Builders LLC. The project description is construction of a single family home, septic and associated improvements. And we'll start with Matt again from Lucas Environmental.
Yeah, I think this was a similar situation. It was in pretty good shape at the last meeting, needed the DEP file number. I think they may have revised the plan to add some detail on the rooftop infiltration that was added. Again, I haven't seen that plan. I don't know if you have that plan, Melissa? Maybe you zoom in on that stormwater summary at the top there.
The lot 4 details file, I think, is more details. Or not.
Yeah, so it's basically just demonstrating what they're proposing for the rooftop infiltration, which looked fine to me. I don't think there was much else on this one, other than the DEP number again. It looks like Wayne's connected by phone now, maybe.
Yeah. Sherry says the construction notes still say Westford. Is Wayne unable to speak? You're muted, Melissa. You want to be muted, Melissa?
Is
Wayne, can
anybody
you
able to
just-
speak?
Yeah, no, there's too many things open. Wayne, can you put in the last 4 digits of your phone number? There's just a couple people on their phone. I want to make sure I let the right person talk. Maybe. Okay.
Hello,
Hello.
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 I am
Yeah.
so sorry. I am so sorry. What a night. What a night. I was able to see you folks, but none of the audio here worked. I'm at a disadvantage right now because my son's husky and our cat got in a fight and took out a lot of computer components. So not a good situation, but everybody can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. I understand. So with respect, so you folks are on lot 4 right now?
Yeah, so we continued lot 5.
Okay, thank you.
We closed 28 Granny Road, map 50, lot 51,
Thank you.
and we're on lot 4.
Okay, so lot 4, I heard that Sherry had mentioned that Westford was still on the plan. Obviously, that's my bad. That's on the second page in the notes at the top on the details. So what I would ask, I think we've addressed the stormwater request, and in fact, that was part of the, when we were doing lot 5, we looked to address it there as well. That table was already filled out, the detail was prepared, but never made it to the plan. When I opened it up today, I saw that and I kicked myself. So with respect to Westford, obviously we're not in Westford. We've addressed the stormwater request. We do have the stormwater sizing on that first sheet, as Matt had called out, and the detail for that is on the second sheet, which is the detail sheet in the lower left-hand corner. It's a Cultec 180 recharger system that we're looking at. And in this situation here would be a configuration of 6 units to give us the required volume to take the entire rooftop runoff. Again, that was basically it. Ideally, if we could close the hearing and as one of the conditions, modify that Westford call out, that would be ideal if everybody's happy with the stormwater system.
Do we have a DEP number for this?
We do. We
Yeah.
actually got that 2 days ago, so I can call that up. Melissa, you got that as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I have that Just looking in my file here, folks. Thank you.
It's 10:56 and there was no technical comments.
So Wayne, procedurally, if you close the hearing, we can't take any new information in, even a edit like that. So we
Okay.
would need you to fix that and resubmit the plans. And
Okay,
because they need to be stamped by a professional engineer and so forth and be accurate. So
sure.
that's just something that we typically don't waver on.
Mr. Chairman, I respect that. I respect that. So,
I mean, we
with
can
that,
certainly
you-
close this next hearing and wrap it up.
Yep. Understood. Understood. When do you folks meet again?
August 20th.
3 weeks.
Okay. It is what it is. Okay, so that would be the only edit that we're looking at is the change, the Westford note.
Well, let me open up to the board and see if anybody else has any
Sure,
other
thank you.
comments or edits that they
Thank you.
have. So anybody on the board here have any other comments, edits, questions?
Nope. We're probably gonna be in this meeting for a while. I don't know if you can get a change in a stamp in the next 2 hours. Or 3 or 4 or 12, however long it's gonna take.
I could do that.
We're going to try to move this along.
Okay. Does that work for you folks or no? I'll do whatever
That-
the board, I would love to do that, but whatever works for the board. I'm sorry, that will work?
Melissa?
You're on mute, Melissa.
That's fine with me. I mean, it's up to you. I have no problem. If I see it by email, I can let you know and we can come back to it after we
Okay.
get through the other public hearings.
Oh, you folks are wonderful. I'll head to the office and I'll get that done.
Okay, so we're going to leave this just open and floating for now.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, folks. You folks are wonderful.
Okay, do-
I will be back. You should have that within the hour.
All right, well, sit tight just for 1 second. Do we have anybody from the public have any comments or questions on this
And if
application?
anyone does have questions, please use the raise hand feature and I'll allow you to talk. But right now I don't see anything.
Okay. Then we'll move on.
Thank you, folks. Much appreciated. I will get that plan to Melissa shortly. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Drive safe, drive careful. He races to the office. Okay, next up is 151 Middle Road in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw. The Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020 at 7:10 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 151 Middle Road, map 28, lot 10 for the applicant 153 Middle Road Realty Trust. The project description is construction of a single-family home and associated site improvements. This will be a virtual meeting in accordance with the orders issued by the governor during the current state of emergency. There will be no in-person attendance by the public. Persons may attend and participate in the hearing by following the Zoom link at southboroughtown.com/remote meeting and to review the meeting material.
Good evening. I believe I'm here, but I can't see you by video, and I've had success with this in the past, and I've tried to log on a couple of times, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong this time. But you'll just have to hear me. And you can hear me?
We can hear you, and we know what you
Good.
look like, so go right ahead.
You know, and thank you very much. And I don't have a nice palm tree or the ocean moving to my back like you do.
Well.
Thank you, Melissa. So 151 Middle Road is the lot furthest to the south on Middle Road as part of a subdivision we recently completed with the planning board. This is right at the trolley crossing. And I know the commission's familiar with the trolley crossing in that passed through the Leeds Way project that we did for Mr. Bartolini a few years back. So this happens to be the piece that would be the furthest to the east, where it connects to Middle Road, and the trolley line keeps going east from this point. We did flag the wetlands at basically at the base of the old trolley tracks that went through there. The buffer zone is shown on the lot. We're proposing a 4-bedroom dwelling. It's also shown with a driveway coming in across the existing driveway that's there. There's a large barn that's to the right, straddling the lot line now. And then the former Tanaholtz residence is located to the right of that, and that actually falls on the next lot. Soil absorption systems on this lot, very highly permeable soils. It's all gravels that are here. So we have basically 2-minute perk rates, no groundwater presence. The groundwater is actually associated with a wetland at the bottom of the trolley tracks, and that's about 16 feet, if not more, below grade from where we are on the site. So it's a fairly well-drained area. We don't have town water here, so there's also a proposed well that's located in the front yard area. Leaching areas outside the 100-foot buffer zone. Not a great deal of grading to create this residential lot here. The driveways are fairly uniform coming off of Middle Road. There is a low spot as part of our proposal. There's a filter strip going in on the south side of the driveway to intercept water. And then we also added roof drain collection systems at the 4 corners of the house. That was added after we got Lucas Environmental's comments. It was, I want to say yesterday, but I think that's when I got them. I may have got them the day before, but I do apologize. We've got a compost sock at the limit of work. And there are notes regarding erosion control methods and procedures. There's a construction entrance apron, although less likely to be needed because I'm coming in over an existing driveway. So we're going to maintain that driveway through construction until we create the new one, and then we'll just go to pavement with that project. So I don't think it's going to be all that necessary. Let me see what else that I may need to discuss with you. That's it. We do have a DEP file number, 1057. They had no comments. It's all buffer zone work. Oh, I know Matt had picked up something that we went back out to check on because the presumption has always been that there's some sort of culvert here connecting the west side, which is where this is located, to the east side of the old trolley tracks. Can't find anything out there. I would guess that at a minimum, they probably put in some sort of French drain because this area doesn't flood. It doesn't accumulate a lot of water. It does leave this area. So I'm fairly confident that something is there, but there's no evidence of it. I could not get anyone at the Department of Public Works to comment on it in town here. Called Karen a few times, and I solicited a couple of DPW employees that I know to say if they ever had to deal with this, and none of them had recalled anything there. They might have had they had town water here, but there is no water in this section of the road. We did file as if this was connected to be more conservative. I don't have a problem with this being called an isolated wetland, but I have no problem with it being called a connected wetland either, because there definitely is a wetland on the east side. It forms right at the base of Middle Road, and it continues going to the east behind the transfer station. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, we do have Board of Health approval too, by the way. So that's the other thing you should be aware of. That soil absorption system is approved. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Matt from Lucas Environmental.
Thank you. Peter mentioned a few of my comments. I guess just to follow up on his latest comment about sort of whether there was a connection there or not. One of probably the main reason I brought that up was I raised the specter of if this area provides any vernal pool habitat, and if there was a culvert there draining, and I wouldn't think there would be, but there was a decent amount of ponded water in there when I was there the other day, enough where there were some green frogs hopping around in it. And I would imagine if it's got water this time of year in the springtime, it probably has quite a bit more. Whether there's a culvert there that's blocked or there was never one there, or what the situation is, I don't know. But I guess in my mind, it raised the specter of, does it provide any habitat for any vernal pools? Again, the site does have an existing home and barn on it as previously developed, but they are moving the dwelling significantly closer to the wetland than what's out there now, which I guess leads me to my next comment was, this subdivision appears to have created this lot where it doesn't leave a lot of room for the dwelling not being put, as I said, so much closer to the wetland than the existing buildings. So I just didn't know if that was just pointing that out as, I guess, a point of discussion for the commission as to whether that's an issue or not. And then I think there was some minor yard dumping out there that, can be cleaned out as part of the work and obviously would be discontinued in the future. And then my only other comment, and Peter, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. I know you have a sort of a trench drain along the edge of the driveway. Want to get your feelings if that was going to be significant in a large storm where you do kind of have everything that's kind of flowing to that low point near Middle Road. And we have, as you know, a very steep slope going down to that wetland. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on if anything else needed to be put in at that point, as opposed to just that little grade line you have for making sure we don't have any issues on that slope.
So again, regarding the vernal pool, I know we did have Scott Morrison when we did the project for the Bartolinis look at this area, and the conclusion then was that there wasn't one here, although it was off locus, so that's why we really didn't do anything about it at the time. I actually had Scott's notes because these are all flags that were done at that time. We refurbished them, if you will, for this project. But his conclusion at that time wasn't that it was vernal, so I'm going to still rely upon that position.
Did he actually note that in his notes that he felt, I don't know what time of year he was out there either.
Yeah, I remember when we did the work, we just asked him to look at that for us, and the conclusion then was that it wasn't. But at the same time, I'm not going to try to extrapolate, to today with that. I'm just saying that if somebody in the future wants to go and look at this area, I'm certainly fine with that. I just don't believe that there's one there, today with where we are with this scenario. I don't have a problem with introducing a small rain garden as part, the filter strip is there. The ground is extremely permeable here. So I don't expect there to be any runoff. We actually didn't from the roof area either. We put a filter strip around the building, and I figured when I spoke with Melissa earlier today, I just said that I would put in the chambers to put roof drains in, so we would collect it rather than have it run off the roof and fall to the ground and then infiltrate. We just figured we'd be proactive about it. So we did add those. There's an existing driveway there that's been there for, this Tannerholtz house is historic. We did go to the historical commission. Unfortunately, it's in deplorable condition. There's powder post beetles. The floors they drop like almost 4 inches in one stretch. So you up to the point where you feel like you're going to fall when you're walking. So it's in pretty tough shape. But that driveway has never caused an erodible surface there. So I don't believe there's going to be a problem with it, but I would also not mind a condition if you wanted us to, at that low point, to introduce a small rain garden. We've given you details for that in the past. We just did one at the Bartolini project behind there. So I would just mimic that if that's, if we're inclined to support this, I don't mind making that a condition. I just don't want to have to revise the plan further. I'm sorry, I'll stop talking.
Anything else, Matt?
No, that was pretty much all my comments.
All right, any other comments from other board members? All right, so hearing nothing, I assume that's a no. Anybody from the public have any comments?
I don't see anything.
Don't say anything. I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and close this and we can deal with any sort of rain garden questions or that sort of thing in the order conditions.
Yes, that'd be fine. Or you can make it a condition to look at the site with Melissa. I have no problem with that too. And I could show her what the existing driveway has done to date. And if we want to introduce something there, I'd be happy to do so.
I'm pretty familiar with the site. I go by it, all the time.
I guess my only other thought on that was where the site's pretty well stabilized with trees and other uses upgrading it, it's all being converted into, is it 4 house lots, Peter?
There was an existing house on the 4th lot on that. So yes, there'll be 3 new houses.
Okay.
But
So it
again, the
seems like
soils were all well drained. Every one of these lots has very well drained soils.
Yeah. That's fine. I defer to the engineering on it.
Okay.
Peter, will these all be cleared at the same time?
No, I don't anticipate them going simultaneously, but I'll make sure that there's proper erosion systems put in place, and we can do some check areas if they do multiple areas. We made sure that we stayed below the threshold with the areas to ensure stormwater was protected, and that's why I just thought it was prudent to put these roof drains in as well. Because once that roof goes on, you still have some unstabilized ground, so we'll make sure that those go in right away.
All right. You have any reason to keep this application open?
I'd prefer to close it personally. I know they're
Oh,
anxious to get started.
Oh, I'm surprised at that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, do I hear a motion to close this hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, vote by roll call.
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Dyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yes.
Hasmano.
Yes.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you, Peter.
Before I go, if I could, I had put in a discussion item for 84 Main. If you're going to take that up later this evening because of your agenda, Melissa, would you just mind calling me? So I don't have to sit here all night? Or could you take me now? Because I don't know what your agenda's like. It seems as though it might be full.
Yeah, we've got 3 more, scheduled hearings with time, so we have to get through those before we can pick up
Okay,
any.
fine. Very good. So
new
Melissa, if
business.
you don't mind, I'll have my phone.
Yep, I'll send you a
Okay.
text.
Thanks much. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Sudbury Reservoir boat ramps. In accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 31, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020 at 7:10 PM, a little later than that, via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located along Sudbury Reservoir, map 58, lot 2A, for the applicant, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The project description is improvement of a boat launch at Framingham Road and East Main Street, and installation of a new boat ramp off Acre Bridge Road.
All right, my name is Bill Moulton with DCR. Melissa, can you unmute phone 3720? That's the design engineer, Brian LaRochelle. So,
Awesome.
From the last, do you want me to go ahead or do you want to?
Oh, no, I was just checking to make sure that everyone can hear me.
Okay.
Yep, you're good.
All right.
Okay.
From the last meeting, you asked us to look at stormwater and look at design a little bit more. So we did that. One thing you asked for was developing an alternatives analysis for Acre Bridge Road. So we did look at off of Farm Road by a sewer pump station there in Marlborough. That would be about 500 feet to construct, we'd have to construct a road about 500 feet to reach a decent launching spot on the shoreline. So we're talking about over 6,000 square feet of disturbance there within the watershed. We looked at another site, which we've already had been looking at, which was off Broadmeadow Street in Marlborough. And there's an old road or cart path that goes down from there to the, we didn't get quite to the water's edge, probably a couple hundred feet. And that road is overgrown and it's sort of halfway, it's about 1,500 feet long, about halfway down. It's sort of, you lose definition of what the road was like. So we had quite a bit of work to do there to rehab it. Also building a couple feet of road over to where we looked like a suitable spot for a ramp. We're not sure if something like that would actually work out. You know, there's still a lot of, I think it would be a lot of work, a lot of disturbance within the watershed to create that spot. But it's something we had already started looking at. One thing about Farm Road, it's extremely dangerous to pull out of that site. There's a curve up ahead, so about 100 feet up, there's a curve. And even though the traffic can move along on that road, and I don't see it as a very safe exit for a truck and trailer pulling out of that site. I think it'd be very dangerous. So, I mean, if you compare that with Acre Bridge, we have already an existing road right next to the reservoir, Woods Road. It's less than 50 feet to the shoreline, and we probably have less than 1,500 feet of disturbance in that area. So, you know, overall, based on revisions we've done, we've reduced our disturbance within the 100-foot buffer from 8,700 square feet down to just over 5,000 square feet. So, but it's some stormwater, and I'll let Brian talk about the details on the design changes he did and the stormwater he did. So, Brian, you want to talk about that?
Okay. Yep. So I don't know if you want to pull up the plan sheet. I can kind of walk you through some of the minor changes that we did.
Is there a new plan sheet or it's the same plan sheet as last time?
These have been revised. I think the date that
Yeah, it's
got on them is the 23rd.
under the 723 update folder on Dropbox.
Ah, there's another folder hiding there. Gotcha. Thanks.
So the changes have been pretty minor. For the first site, this is East Main Street, or off of East Main Street. The design is pretty much the same. We're just utilizing the existing gravel road that goes down to the water. We've eliminated part of the turnaround, or rather I should say we've changed the cover material of part of the turnaround. Originally we're proposing dense grade, which compacts really tightly. Instead we're going to do a crushed stone, which will just help us with meeting the peak rates in terms of the runoff down through this area. So that was really the only change at this site on the plans. The next sheet, the Acre Bridge Road site. We've eliminated, as Bill has said, a bunch of the road work, the road improvement work from the gate to our proposed boat launch. The road is in pretty okay shape, I'll say. We certainly have some roads around the watersheds that are in the worst shape. So at this point, we're going to eliminate that from our proposed work. This boat ramp is not going to see all that many boat trips through here. So we felt that we could get by with the road as is. We've also shrunk down the size of the turnaround area directly opposite of the boat ramp. The big change for this one was we added a small detention basin, BMP. This is just to help us manage the stormwater and to attenuate the peak flows from pre to post conditions. So those are pretty much the plan changes at this point. We've met the stormwater standards. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have on the stormwater aspect.
Okay. Matt from Lucas Environmental, do you have any comments on the revisions?
We didn't do any review on this.
Oh, that's right. So no comment.
No comments.
Did you actually provide us with your alternatives analysis in some written form?
Yes, I did.
You did? Yeah, and it basically follows the narrative you provided?
Yes.
Unless you have those. Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments from board members?
No,
Judith?
no,
I thought you were gonna say something.
no. I was just trying to say no.
Okay. Hard word. Mr. Pete, did you have some comments? I thought that you might be looking to say something.
Nope, just looking at all the content, but it looks okay. I mean, it'd be nice to have Ben's perspective. I think he was the one pushing on the stormwater piece, but it sounds like that's been addressed.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, thank you for going off and looking at alternatives and reworking the plans to minimize impact. That's goodness. Any reason to not close the hearing?
We
Yeah,
don't have a DEP number.
That's a good one.
yeah. And I've been multiple emails, telephone call. I will continue.
Yeah, Bill, I did it on my side, but I'll try again too. I was
Yeah,
surprised. And the comments online, it still says that the check hasn't cleared revenue, which is surprising for how long it's been, so.
No, actually, the money was before I filed with DEP electronically. The money was transferred prior to that. I've talked to DEP's person who deals with this, and they worked very closely with our financial people, and the money was transferred, as I said, prior to me filing with DEP. I think it was like the day after I had filed with you. So I don't know what the hang up. In fact, we did get an email saying that comment was, I guess, coded wrong or something, but the only email I got was that I would probably have my fire number by the time of the meeting, and that was the first meeting. So I don't know what the hang up is. I was hoping somebody would get back to me and find out what exactly the problem is. So.
All right, so we'll have to continue it, and hopefully
Yeah.
by 8:20 you'll have your number.
I just checked. There was nothing there, so
Okay.
I don't anticipate seeing it. I will keep checking. I'll keep emailing, trying to find out.
All right. So
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
yes.
do we know what the construction schedule is for this? It'd be nice to get it going based on the I'm sure the lower water levels at the moment.
Okay, well, one thing we will probably, and this is all based on staffing and the whole COVID situation, but we were looking to do it in the fall. And one reason we do in the fall was we lower the water level now. You would have a lot of dead vegetation along the shoreline that would probably cause an odor issue. So that's why the plan, and plus there's other activities going on now with invasive species work. So at the current time, so we were looking to do it in the fall to avoid odor issues for neighboring people. And it's really not too much of an issue for MWRA to drop the level of the water, the amount. So we were going to have them drop it 5 to 6 feet. And so we wouldn't be doing pretty much any work within the water. It would all be drained by then. And we'll have our silt curtains up and our erosion controls up. But we wouldn't have to dewater.
Okay, we've got a chat entry here. It's from Tom Gittens. He says, will the public be able to put boats in now? And the answer is no.
No.
These ramps are for emergency access to be able to get out to the various islands and protect the watershed. Okay. Do I hear a motion to continue?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call vote?
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Kyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yes.
Tasamato.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I will keep trying to get a hold of somebody at DEP and try to find a file number so we can close this out at the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next up is CSX Railway. Saying something? No, okay. All right, in accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a request for determination for a project along the CSX right of way for the applicant CSX Transportation, Inc. The project description is confirming wetland boundaries for the railroad vegetation management plan.
All right, Steve, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this RDA has been submitted because CSX needs to renew their 5-year vegetation management plan. And that plan includes, by reference to the Wetlands Protection Act, a requirement to verify the boundaries of wetland resource areas along the railroad. We last submitted an RDA in 2017 and received a determination in 2017 as well. I'm not sure why that was in 2017, not 2015. But the vegetation management plan normally lasts 5 years, so it's up for renewal this year. The locations of the wetland resource areas along the CSX railroad have not changed in the previous 3 years. So we submitted a set of maps that are an improvement over the previous one from 2017, but they do make it a little bit more challenging to match up where the wetlands are. But I'll tell you in summary, I'm not sure if any members were on the commission in 2017, but we've marked where there are wetlands within 10 feet of the railroad. And that is because the railroad is prohibited from applying herbicide within 10 feet of a wetland. So those wetlands within 10 feet of the railroad bed are marked in yellow on the drawings. Also, there are blue zones shown, which are the 100-foot buffer zone or 200-foot riverfront area. Those are indicated because the railroad is prohibited from applying herbicide more than once per year in those zones. I should say these prohibitions are part of the rights of way management regulations, Mass 33, CMR 11, I believe is their citation. So again, this is an RD that is required because CSX wants to renew their vegetation management plan so they can continue to apply herbicide once per year on the right of way, except within 10 feet of wetlands. And the wetlands are unchanged since 2017. I'd be happy to answer any questions or explain anything else.
So I see that there's an Lucas Environmental logo. Did Chris join? There he is. You're muted. Mr. Lucas, you're muted. There you go.
How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
I believe you rode in the railway truck last time that this was identified, correct?
I did, and we walked several areas as well to verify the location of the wetlands. And there were some areas that the GIS didn't pick up, and they were updated and presented in the final approval in 2017. CSX modified the plan, resubmitted it with their spray plan. I haven't looked at the new one. I know, Matt, you've looked at that, correct?
Yeah, so I looked at the approved plan from 2017 and compared it the best I could to the current plan, the different format. So it was a little bit difficult, but going through it, as Mr. Herzog said, it looks like the spray zones haven't changed at all. So I guess from interpolation of that, the wetlands haven't changed at all. I did send the plan that Melissa just brought up. I had highlighted a few areas on here of areas that I guess had questions on why they weren't no spray zones, because they generally look like where there was a stream channel that was probably culverted underneath the railroad. So on this one, you can see that the northern half appears as yellow, but the southern half doesn't, but I presume the culvert goes all the way underneath. So Melissa can just flip through those quickly, and I don't know if Mr. Herzog can comment on if that needs any correction or not.
Yes, certainly. All of these yellow no spray zones, Chris and I together in 2017 walked and investigated. And I captured their locations with a handheld GPS. So what you are seeing on those maps, we've also overlain the Mass GIS, Mass DEP wetlands data layer. And that is based on air photo interpretation. So it's not quite accurate on the ground. It gives you a broad idea of where there are wetlands and streams. So in that first example that you just mentioned, it's the wetland, it is a wetland and a culvert opening on the north side of the track within 10 feet of the railroad bed, the crushed stone on which the rail sits. On the south side, the culvert opening and the wetland are greater than 10 feet from the road bed. So that's why it's not marked as a wetland and no spray on that side. And that I looked at your markups, Melissa sent them to me, and it seems to be consistent in that regard, that Mass GIS, the Mass DEP wetlands data layer might show an intermittent stream or a wetland near the track, but actually on the ground, some of those areas you questioned are greater than 10 feet from the railroad bed. I hope that explains sufficiently.
Yeah, that's fine from my perspective, as long as the commission is good with that. I believe in some towns, actually, there's a field delineation required. And I don't know if this was ever delineated in the past or not, but yeah, I don't have any further comment.
Well, to address that comment, we did not hang typical pink flags away from the railroad because the railroad right of way is fairly narrow. What we do is mark on the tracks and again collect the GPS data of where the wetland lies within 10 feet of the tracks. And so those data were based on an on-the-ground delineation. And again, in 2017, Chris Lucas and I walked the entire right-of-way through Southborough to verify these. And as Chris said, he had a few changes, which we made on the plans. And that was accepted in the determination in 2017. And once again, the locations have not changed since 2017.
Can you speak very briefly to the nature of how the spraying is done? How far does it go? How is it sprayed?
Sure. There is a truck that is called a high rail vehicle. It has wheels that allow it to mount on the railroad track. It looks like a heating oil truck, something like that. It carries a big tank filled with water and with an herbicide mixed in. And there is a bank of spray nozzles on the back that is lowered to just above the track. And the driver is able to control those nozzles so he can spray all the way across or just from one side versus the center, just the other side. And he drives along the railroad, accompanied by a field technician from my company who has copies of all the maps. And the driver and the technician can then see where we've marked on the railroad where these no spray areas are. But if any of those markings are obscured, we have the maps with us as well, so we can see where there's a wetland coming up. So he turns the weed spray off when they encounter those no spray areas. The weed spray is done once per year, and every spring, usually March or so, we prepare what's called a yearly operational plan, a YOP, and send it to the Conservation Commission, also the Board of Health and the chief elected official in Southborough and every municipality through which the rail passes. And that identifies which particular herbicide they'll be using that year, because they do change from year to year. All the herbicides they use are taken from a list that the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources provides called the Sensitive Area Materials List, because they use herbicides that are relatively immobile. So if they drip off the leaves in the water solution, they will adhere to soil particles and not be washed away easily into water bodies or groundwater. That's a summary.
So like, I'm just trying to imagine, do the spray nozzles spray herbicide like 3 feet outside the edge of the tracks, 10 feet outside the edge of the tracks, 3 inches outside the edge of the tracks?
It's to the edge of the crushed stone, which is called ballast roadbed the railroad sits on. So it varies from 2 to 3 or maybe 4 feet to either side of the rails.
And
Their
then the
objective
nozzles
is
are
just to keep
directed
the
down.
vegetation.
Okay.
Yes, spraying down.
Okay. Great. I was
Uh,
just trying to, I guess there was an email that Melissa had forwarded. Someone seemed to be concerned about, whether the spraying was being done near, residential and daycares and stuff like this. But it sounds like it's very, very localized.
It is, yes. And also the driver will turn off the spray if there's any chance of drift, like if there's a residential house near the tracks, which isn't very common, but a yard or garden. There is actually one place in Southborough where there is an extensive garden. I remember it from 2017 near the tracks. And the weed sprayer will turn off within 50 feet of such an area, just in case of wind drift or something like that.
That's great. Thanks.
Chris, you have any comments relative to using the same wetland boundaries that you viewed in 2017 today?
No, based on the nature of the rail, I don't foresee those wetlands shifting anything significant in the last 3 years. And I think we had a pretty good plan, and there were a couple spots we might have been a little conservative identifying the wetlands to ensure they didn't spray in those areas. So as long as the mapping hasn't changed, I'm comfortable with it.
And Matt, you did a review of 2017 and these, and you brought up questions with these red highlights where you had questions why they weren't yellow, no spray zones, and I think we got the answer for that. Is there any other concerns you have?
No, all set.
Okay. Anything from the public? Melissa? No, okay.
Not seeing anything. Not seeing anything.
So this was an RDA.
Correct.
So I think we move forward with a negative determination of applicability.
Yep.
Okay, do I hear a motion to move that forward?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes.
Yes.
Passamato.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we've got continued notice of intent, Park Central, 0 Turnpike Road, map 33, 41, 24, 25, lots 4, 4A, 3, and 5. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct the continued public hearing on Thursday, July 30, 2020 at 7:35 p.m. The commission will consider notice of intent filed by the applicant and owner, Capital Group Properties LLC, for a project located at 0 Turnpike Road, Park Central, maps 33, 41, 24, 25, and lots 4, 4A, 3, and 5. The project description is construction of a mixed residential development with wetland and stream crossing, stream restoration, and associated road work, stormwater utilities, and grading.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. For the record, John Cusick with Polar Engineering. I am here with Danny Ruiz and Bob DePietri with Capital Group Properties. Scott Goddard with Goddard Consulting is here, as well as Matt Watsky. So we made our first presentation to the board over a year ago. I think it was back in June of 2019. It was on the redesign of the project. During that presentation, we outlined really the significant changes that we made to the project since the applicant was before you 3+ years ago. Since the time we presented to you in June and through this extensive process, we believe we've further enhanced the project. We also believe it exceeds what's required under the stormwater management standards, and though not subject to the local standards as we've discussed, we do believe we've incorporated design modifications to meet many of the requirements within the local bylaw. So since it's been a while since we've been before you, I'd like to take a real quick step back and just reiterate some of the improvements that we feel are substantial, because I think they do show the commitment that the applicant has made through this process. So just hitting some of the highlights, the development has been reduced. It started out at 142 units and was reduced to 126 units. Development was pulled further away from the resource areas and respects the local ordinance relative to the 20-foot no disturb buffer. We've also modeled the stormwater at the request of the commission to ensure that it works for the 8.1-inch storm as requested under the ordinance. We've added a substantial amount of stormwater BMPs consisting of infiltration basins, 4 bays, extended detention basins, all of which have pre-treatment. With all this added treatment, it makes a big difference, and our TSS removal ranges between 85 and 97%, depending on which watershed you're measuring from. So it's very significant. All of the BMPs, based on the comments, all of them are 50 feet plus from wetland resource areas and outside of the 100-foot vernal pool buffer, as well as requested through the process. From a stormwater management recharge standpoint, it's quite substantial as well. We're recharging 60,000 yards, or excuse me, 60,000 cubic feet of recharge, a little over that, when only 15,000 is required. So it's 4 times the amount that is required under the regulations. We've matched the hydrology to the ponds to match post-development storage and existing hydrology to within a few inches. And all of the existing outlets remain. Again, the original application was modifying those. Beyond that, we discussed adding streams where existing pipe channels are today. So replacing a couple of sections of piped culverts and mitigating that through constructed streams and crossings. And again, if you recall, there's 2 areas of on-site run-on where stormwater is coming on from 495, a substantial amount that's totally untreated. And we're making provisions to treat that water as it enters our site. That's 2 from 495, and there's another one coming from Blackthorn Drive. And again, nothing exists today. So we believe this is a very well-designed project that protects the interest of the Act. And we believe it's going to improve the quality of the stormwater as compared to the existing conditions. It's not going to adversely, in fact, affect the function of the wetland vegetation, and it's going to reduce the existing invasive plant community. We feel very strongly of that. So where do we stand now? Essentially, your peer review consultants have issued many rounds of peer review letters, and the applicant team here, we responded to each comment with supplemental information, plans, revisions, response letters. I think after committing the many hours, as I'm sure that you have, to sifting through all of that material, I think you'll find what we submitted is complete. I think it's comprehensive, and we believe it addresses all of the technical comments that we've been asked to address. However, there does remain the one significant issue where your peer reviewers and the applicant team have a fundamental disagreement. That's whether the regulatory definition of the word alter, which was set when the regulations were first written, and set the standard for establishing the jurisdiction based on what work would dredge, fill, or alter wetlands, is applicable to the newly published stormwater standards. And that allows changes that would meet the definition of the word alter. So your consultants essentially have interpreted the rule to prohibit any work that would, in their view, alter the drainage patterns, and have advised you that a portion of the site design would result in temporary increases in on-site water surface elevation and peak rates that they assert would alter those conditions. So we have taken the position that, number one, the stormwater regulatory standards specifically have been interpreted by DEP to focus on the point where stormwater reaches the property boundary. And this is to ensure there's no increase in flooding will occur off-site. Essentially, you can't flood your neighbor. 2, that our project meets the standard while also meeting the criteria to fully treat the water on-site prior to discharging to the on-site wetlands. It's fully treated. And based on that, our project causes no adverse impact to either on or off-site wetlands. It's a mouthful that I just went through there, but just to really try to break it down a little bit more for those of us that aren't attorneys, when the original project, industrial project, now I'm going way back, when that was constructed back in the 70s, they carved out the roadways, they put in infrastructure, the water, the drainage infrastructure, they created stormwater basins. And all of that work was done under a valid order. And it actually received a certificate of compliance from the commission. That project obviously wasn't ever constructed beyond that work. But the basins were constructed and they collect and attenuate stormwater. So the disagreement that we have, our project respects those constructed basins that were built in that original projects as their wetlands, in that we don't propose a physical alteration to those. We treat them as wetlands. We adhere to the locally required 20-foot setback that we have to work with. And we fully treat the stormwater to a higher standard, in fact, than the state requires prior to discharging into those basins that were constructed as stormwater basins. So all of that, I don't think is in question. I think all of that is confirmed. However, to paraphrase kind of where the disagreement is and the argument that your consultants have made, they believe we're altering these basins by changing the hydrology to them, thereby saying that we don't comply with that section of the regulations. We disagree with their literal interpretation of that definition, and just to try to, I guess, dumb it down a little bit to a common sense type of an example. Every project where land is altered changes hydrology, for instance. You take a small project, trees are cleared, impervious areas are added, stormwater basins are constructed to attenuate the rates of runoff, and then runoff is ultimately directed to the wetlands as water flows downhill. perfectly common scenario that we see all the time, and it's provable under the act, provided that the water's treated, recharge is provided to the ground, and the runoff rates off-site are less than the existing conditions. Again, going back to you can't flood your neighbors. It's pretty simple, and I think we would all agree upon that scenario. However, if you take that from a literal point of view, the hydrology actually is impacted. It's altered under this scenario. It's altered in the fact that the runoff rates are reduced. They have to be for the stormwater regs. They must be less than the pre-existing conditions. So reduction in rate meets the definition of alter if one uses that definition. However, since the water is clean, it's recharged into the ground and the rates are reduced to not cause flooding, the project would meet the regulatory standards and be approvable. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but I do think it's important because it really kind of gets to what we're talking about here. So with that, I think through this process and all the paper that's gone back and forth, I do believe that we have clearly demonstrated that there's no increase in runoff rates really of any amount at the property lines as the rule is written and applied by DEP. So, however, to take it to the next level and really to prove a point that we're not altering the hydrology in any way that would cause a loss of wetlands due to the impacts within the on-site basins. Again, these were designed as basins and constructed as basins with outlet control structures and water flowing to them. We analyzed each sub-watershed and ponded areas separately, and we provided calculations that really show that the stormwater levels within these basins are within a few inches of how they are today, pre-development and post-development. The elevations don't change. They're very consistent. So there's no scientifically significant increase in any water surface elevation, and continuing to have flow here does nothing to pose an adverse impact, and it's really somewhat of a review of the definition of that word. So again, that's a lot of words. So where do we go from here? Really, I think where we're at this point, after all the back and forth with plans and comment letters, I think the commission has a choice. We feel strongly that we've presented a really well thought out project that does provide a significant benefit, as I described above in previous hearings. If you approve it, as we're hopeful that you will, you'd set your conditions of approval and be part of the construction and enforcement process. If you ultimately deny it, the applicant would undoubtedly exercise his rights and end up appealing it to DEP. We don't want to do that, and we don't think it's in anybody's best interests, as there's no local control of the project at that point. But it's something that would happen, and I don't at all say that as a threat. It's just where we're at the point where we have a disagreement between applicant and peer review consultants. So with that, as I mentioned, Matt Watsky is available here as counsel for us to discuss the criteria that DEP would use on projects where denial is issued based on lack of information. Again, we don't think that is a particular case here. I think all of the information has been provided, but we have a disagreement relative to a regulatory interpretation. So with that, we're happy to really go into any questions or details that you might have, but we do believe at this point we've provided everything that has been asked of us and made every plan change that we could to address every comment, and we're really stuck at that one interpretation difference. So with that, I will turn it back to the board and answer any questions and have the team here available to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. I'd like to hear from our peer reviewers at this point. I guess we'll start with Lucas Environmental, and then we'll move on.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So our last.
Somebody needs to
Matt,
mute.
Yeah, John, John and Dan, can you mute your computer? It's kind of doing some feedback. Thank you.
All right, is that better?
It sure is.
So our last review memo that we had submitted entitled Review Memo Number 6. Basically, what we had taken the approach on that was to submit it in a form where, because it appeared as though we were, as Mr. Kusich mentioned, we were kind of to the point where the applicant had submitted all the information they were going to submit, it appeared, and that we were just sort of at an apparent potential impasse on some of these issues. So our memo really ran through a list of items that we felt the commission had to discuss as far as did the applicant or the project meet or not meet certain standards, address all the items that had been sort of discussed in the process. And so there was a fairly lengthy list that was in that memo. Looked like there were 15 items that basically were sort of has the applicant or has the applicant not provided adequate responses on those items. And then the second part of that memo was a list of potential suggested special conditions in the event that the project was approved. And again, those were really this whole document was meant as sort of a discussion standpoint for the commission to potentially go through these and determine whether these standards were met or not for the basis of either approving the project or potentially denying the project. And there were a few additional comments in that memo as well that we felt hadn't necessarily been fully addressed. And I know the applicant did submit written responses to our final memo. So we didn't go back further on that because it appeared as though no additional information was going to be submitted at that point. So that's really where we stand. We've kind of laid out what we feel are the remaining issues in that memo that the commission can go through as so desired.
All right, thanks, Matt. Amy Bell from Fuss and O'Neill.
Hello.
Hi.
We, same as Matt had just said, we issued our last memo back in May 5th of 2020, laid out similar to how Matt had laid it out, where we outlined what we felt was not met by the applicant as far as any as far as certain stormwater standards as the project is currently designed. And as Mr. Rutz had said, we are at a disagreement with how they interpret their discharge points versus how we would interpret their discharge points. We interpret the stormwater standards to say that each new point source stormwater discharge must meet the standards prior to discharge to any wetlands, and the applicant has not demonstrated that all of the standards have been met with that aspect in mind. The May 5th letter outlines that. In addition, we also provided some suggested conditions that we feel may be relevant for the commission to review if they do decide to approve the project. And I would just like to iterate, I know a follow-up letter was issued by the applicant to this May 5th, 2020 review letter that we had provided to the commission. However, there was no additional calculations and no additional plan changes that were completed to address any of the concerns that we still have on the project as Fuss and O'Neill determines and sees the stormwater discharge points versus how the applicant sees it. And I know there was some confusion on specifically standard 3, meeting the water quality volume. I would like to iterate that the applicant has shown they meet the water quality volume as a whole for the project. They have not broken it down to show that even their current 5 discharge points meet the water quality volume. Per the stormwater standards, each discharge point must meet the standard, or it means the stormwater handbook, each discharge point must meet the stormwater standards. In addition, if you view it how Fuss and O'Neill views it, with each stormwater point source stormwater discharge point be prior to discharging to an existing wetland, that standard has not been met either, because the applicant has not shown water quality volume is met prior to that discharge. Peak flows, if using Fuss and O'Neill's determination of point source discharges to the wetlands, it has not been demonstrated that peak flows have been met prior to discharge to a wetland. Stormwater standards do state that you cannot use existing stormwater wetlands as detention. And I did note that Mr. Rutz did say that he feels that there is no alteration to the existing wetlands because the project does provide deduction of peak rates. The applicant shows the project has provided deduction of peak rates to their 5 point source discharges, not to the existing wetlands on the site. So Fuss and O'Neill feels that there will be a potential alteration to these wetlands because the fact that the water quality volume has not been achieved prior to discharge to each of the wetlands, and the peak flow discharge rates have not been reduced prior to discharge to each of the wetlands. And yes, I'm sorry, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. I just got a Microsoft update notice. I may disappear. I hope not. Not very timely. Chris Lucas from Lucas Environmental, do you have any additional comments above and beyond what Matt said, or?
I think Matt summarized it well. I think our main disagreement with the applicant has been on the existing wetlands. Our opinion is they're functioning as wetlands, not stormwater basins. The applicant's wetland scientist even came in originally with an ANRAD to confirm that they were wetlands. That would have been the time to determine if they were basins or not. We disagree with the materials being presented today that indicate they should be treated as basins. The Wetland Protection Act is very clear that structures prior to 96 that weren't designed in accordance with 310 CMR shouldn't be treated as stormwater basins. So I think we've laid that out in the memorandums to date, and we stand by our opinion on that matter.
All right, thank you. Any additional commentary from commission members?
I have a question. You don't mind?
Go ahead, Carl.
Hi. Since I was on the commission when we first heard this, I came across the files dating back to 2016, right? Maybe somebody can address this to help me. It sounds as though we're at the same impasse that we were at 3.5 years ago. Is that, I would like to know if that's a correct observation or is that incorrect? Does anybody know?
This is Scott Goddard. I may add a couple of comments if I could, Carl. You know, in 2016, and which to remind the commission, that's the application that does currently sit before DEP under a notice of intent appeal, right? So we have sort of stayed that process, but it's still out there. That's never been withdrawn. That application did intentionally use the basins in the wetlands on site as constructed in the 90s for stormwater volume control. So there was no kind of beating around the bush on that. That was the intent of the design, and that's what was designed. So if you look at that design, you don't see a spattering of stormwater basins throughout the site to detain the water prior to discharge. Since then, and since consulting with DEP under that appeal process, what the commission has seen is a radical change in the approach to the stormwater management on the site. This design is done by Bowler Engineering, has a plethora of stormwater detention features on the site to detain and discharge that water appropriately without the intent of exclusively using on-site basins as stormwater management. So that's the difference that you see here. I think we're talking about levels of degree at this point rather than the substance of the project. I
You're
think
muted, Carl.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything. I was just, so my summary of that is it's just, if maybe President O'Neill can address this. So it's true. It sounds to me as though you're saying that you reduce the volume of the water that's going into the, as we defined it, wetlands by adding in some detention basins, but you still are doing that to some extent. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Mr. Goddard is correct in saying that the original application back in 2016 did exclusively use the wetlands as stormwater treatment, and the current design does have the addition of stormwater basins and underground infiltration to provide stormwater. Unfortunately, they are still using the existing wetlands to achieve the requirements of the stormwater standards. And despite that, the fact that these were built as basins back in 1986, I believe it was said, as Chris Lucas had said, these were constructed prior to 1996 and per the stormwater standards do not classify as basins and classify as wetlands. So they cannot be used for stormwater management to meet the stormwater standards.
So Carl, the plan that's on appeal with DEP was putting water in these wetlands being used as stormwater basins to the tune of many inches, and I think in some cases 2 feet. This design still uses them, but the amount of water is greatly reduced due to the plethora of stormwater basins that they've added to the site. Does that help your understanding?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, because this is all taking so long, I do remember seeing these, because we don't have everything in front of us like we usually do. I do remember seeing the additional stormwater basins, yeah. So I see the volume is reduced, but the issue remains the same. I mean, it's essentially, to me, that's the bottom line. It's still, should be, I think President O'Neill is saying there should be none. And we've got, I don't know what fraction of what the original was. So yeah, it's a matter, as somebody else said, it's a matter of degree now. Right. And thank you.
Yes. Any other commission member comments?
So this is Jeff. Yeah. Well, I see we have Rebecca Lacey on the line. So can we also hear from you, Rebecca, on your perspective on whether they've demonstrated compliance with the stormwater standards?
Yes, I have to say, I think that your consultants have done a perfect job in interpreting the legal aspects of the DEP regulations. So from a legal perspective, I completely agree with what they've said about how to interpret the regulations and the stormwater standards and how to think about discharges to these formerly basins, now wetlands. So I don't have any additional kind of legal perspective to add. I think your consultants have completely covered it.
Thank you. I do have a question for Bowler Engineering. I did see over the past week or so that you're referring to a M&O plan that you have not submitted to us as yet as part of this filing. And I think that was in response to a letter you received from well, the engineer's slipping my mind right now.
Bruce
What's helping
Salek?
out?
Bruce Salek?
Yes, Bruce Salek, thank you. And what I read in that letter is there was a referral to an M&O plan that was going to be submitted to address some of the other drainage details.
Yeah, so our butter, Jack Bartolini, had some requests to provide some operation and maintenance above and beyond what would otherwise be required. And we don't take exception to that. And should the project be approved, we would provide that in the final documentations to give to you. I think what's submitted right now is in compliance with what the state requires, but we're perfectly willing and have committed to Jack to do more to address his concern.
Well, I would think that we would want to have that submission now as part of our decision process.
Well, I think there was an email that is in the record saying what we will do.
It just says that you'll provide an M&O. It doesn't say what it will be.
No, in the earlier emails that were in the record, it talks about what it would be. And again, should the project be approved, again, we would absolutely make that a part of it.
It seems like putting the cart in front of the horse, but
maybe it's worth asking
for the whole, submittal package, as part of our, deliverance.
Yeah. Based on that comment, can I ask, which maybe feels like a silly question, where we are procedurally? Like, what are we actually asking for tonight? Do we have like the usual, DP comments? I mean, do they have anything to comment? Where is the actual application after all this time?
Well, it's been continued a number of times to allow the consultants to work with the, applicants, engineers and so forth to come to a point where the project meets the, Wetlands Protection Act and the standards in the act and the stormwater, the pieces of the act and so forth. So that's what's been going back and forth. And it sounds like where we're at now is the response to the, using the wetlands to detain water, use those basins as detentions, and they are defined as wetlands. We all agreed to that some time ago through the NRED process, that the amount of water being put into those wetlands has now been greatly reduced, but it's still getting water.
Yep.
And that's where the two sides are sitting at the moment.
Yep. No, I get all that. I was more asking, what kind of motions would we be considering, after our full deliberations tonight? Do we have sort of the ducks lined up that would we actually be considering motions, or is it more they're looking for some kind of feedback as to whether or not they should be preparing these additional documents? Because as you say, it's confusing that we just heard they will make changes once it's approved, but that doesn't make any sense because you have to have the document to approve it or not. So I guess what are you guys, I can't point to you guys, but what are the Park Central folks looking for tonight?
So we're looking for the hearing to be closed tonight. Again, as we went through, and we believe we've done everything that we can do, and we believe we comply. Your peer reviewers disagree with that one fundamental issue that we're not going to agree upon. However, I think the plans as submitted to you are complete. There's not any, lacking information. There isn't something that you've asked for that we haven't provided. It's all been provided. We're at a point now where it's really, do you agree with how we interpret the definition or how your peer reviewers are interpreting it? And then based on that, we'd ask you to make a vote on the project. Again, we feel strongly that even though water is going into the wetlands, and again, water goes to wetlands, it goes downhill. The water is fully treated before going into those wetlands. It so happens that the wetlands that we're talking about were constructed as a stormwater basin and they have outlet control structures. So there really isn't anything we can realistically do about that. What we've chosen to do is try to provide as much recharge, as much treatment above and beyond what would otherwise be provided, and do some other enhancements on the site that we think take the project to another level of treatment. And that's what we've done and we've committed to. But we're essentially kind of at an impasse to whether or not the fact that we've increased flow rates to an on-site wetland impacts that wetland. We feel very strongly that the information we've provided proves there is no impact to those wetlands. And I say impact from a common sense standpoint. The water elevations, we provided calculations that they're within inches. They remain the same. The water treatment prior to going to that, it's all treated. The groundwater recharge on site, it's 4 times as much as what it should be, and it's spread all over the property. The issue is that we're increasing flow rates to an on-site wetland, which was the basins previously. To mitigate flow rates, it really has to do with flooding the downstream properties. So that's the other factor. We proved the hydrology is the same. There's no impact in that regard. There's no flooding. We proved there's no flooding. It's just really an argument on a definition of the word. And that's what we're really talking about. So there isn't any additional information that I think we could provide to you towards that. I think we've done everything we can. If you disagree with what we're talking about, it's essentially it's a DEP item or it's a complete redesign. It's not a tweak to the plan, and the redesign just isn't feasible with the impact it would cause.
This is Scott Goddard too. I'd just like to add a little footnote to John's comments as well. There's a practical part of this that we've tried to bring to light as we've gone through this project. It is somewhat of a unique site. I think the commission's recognized that, the department certainly has recognized that. And so we've taken a unique approach to a unique site. There's things that are proposed in this project that aren't required or typical, right? We're treating stormwater discharge from Route 495, for example, as it enters our site for water quality impacts. We are taking sections of piped stream channel right now that are not required for us to daylight, but we're opening those up to daylighted conditions. So we're improving all the functions and values of bank and BBW where we don't need to. We're protecting isolated vegetated wetlands where they're not protected under state law, but are protected under your bylaw. We're preserving the 20-foot buffer zone, which we're not required to under state law, but to recognize with your bylaw. We reduced the project 2 acres of work within that 20-foot buffer zone between the 2018 version of the project and the current version of the project. And we've demonstrated with, I think, scientific backing that if we kind of let all the chips fall on this dispute on the nuances of stormwater discharge and whether that's an impact to the wetlands, we've posed the question as to what is the actual impact to the wetlands. Would an additional amount of water, a small amount of water over a small period of time cause a negative, a harmful, an adverse impact to the wetland resource areas? Right? Are we going to be destroying vegetation and wildlife habitat, and the ability for the wetlands to serve as flood control and stormwater management, pollution prevention, et cetera. And I think we've answered that as that we've resoundingly satisfied the intent of the Wetland Protection Act with everything that we've done in this project. So we're kind of bringing you a whole package, saying if we look at this in its entirety, do we have something here that is consistent with the Wetland Protection Act and its intentions? And I think the answer is yes. We believe DEP will agree with that, but we don't want to have to go there. And I think it's to everyone's interest to keep this at the local level and take a practical approach to it.
I'd like to add some thought, if I may. This is Matt Watsky. May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay. So without getting into quoting the regulations, what the basic disagreement between the engineers for the project and the town's peer reviewers is an interpretation of a rule that the peer reviewers are interpreting to mean that you cannot have any increase, no matter how small, of the rates of flow going into the wetlands on site. You have to take a look at that. You have to review that from the perspective that under DEP's regulations, you're expected not to cause an adverse impact on the down gradient wetlands by decreasing the flow of water to those wetlands. You can't harm them by starving them of water. And as a practical matter, it's impossible to absolutely precisely meet the rate of flow when you're doing a major development. So the question is, are you causing an adverse impact on the wetland? And to what extent is an increase, even though it is small, at what point does it become too large? So as your consultants are arguing the case, if you take their argument to the extreme, if you had 1/100th of an inch of water surface increase for even a minute, it would not comply with DEP's regulatory standard. But if you had 1/100th of an inch for just 1 minute, that's a decrease in water surface elevation, that would comply. As the chair, Mr. Spasamento, noted, the prior application that got appealed to DEP had several feet of water surface elevation increase, and it lasted for a long time. The project redesign, with significant volumes being detained and treated before they're discharged into the on-site ponds, have reduced the peak rates of flow going into those wetlands to what are, in our view, insignificant levels of increase. Carrying out DEP's intent of the regulation, which is to ensure that the wetlands that are down gradient aren't adversely affected by the changes in hydrology, due to the project. So if you have, I think that John Kusich could list them off for you, but you have as an example, during a 100-year storm event, a 6-inch increase over the course of an entire pond that lasts for, I think, 2 hours. And if you have a 6-inch increase over 2 hours in a pond where it's surrounded by wetland vegetation, that's just not an impact that's going to cause an adverse impact to the vegetation within that wetland resource. It just isn't. And our consultants have provided that documentation and that opinion to you. So we have a basic disagreement with your peer reviewers about the way to interpret this rule. I get it. Sometimes engineers look at things, it's black and white. The rule says what it is, that's what it is. That's how they're going to interpret it. That's fine. But DEP is a regulatory agency, and DEP deals with the realities of the way you have to design a site. And we're confident that DEP will determine that this site, the way this site has been redesigned, the way the stormwater management has been provided, the pre-treatment, the retention, the detention, the infiltration is consistent with DEP's goals in these stormwater management regs. And I believe they're going to give it an approval. That's what I had to say.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Carl?
Can I ask a question? Yeah. I think the other thing that I heard a description from Preston O'Neill was the issue of point source discharge. That there was a problem with that. I just want to review this, make sure I understand that that some of the point sources were not complying to the regulation. Is that true?
So as the stormwater handbook describes, a stormwater point source discharge is any point source that discharges from an infiltration basin or any type of BMP. And so in this case, they have several point source discharges throughout the site, which many of discharge to the wetlands. So a stormwater point source discharge is just basically like a flared end outlet that you would see for a basin that would discharge to grade. And
but you spent some time describing that some of these point source discharges were not meeting regulation. Are these going off the property? Are these inside the property, or what is?
A majority of them are inside the property and they discharge to the existing wetlands. As currently designed, they have not been demonstrated to meet the peaks, to meet or reduce the peak flows per standard 2, and they have not been designed to provide water quality prior to discharge. So yes, you are correct in saying that they don't meet the stormwater standards.
Do we get a response?
If I could,
go, yeah.
yeah,
go
if I
ahead.
could, I apologize. If I could just speak to that by one clarification, I would agree. The internal wetland areas, as we talked about, they don't all meet from the peak rate of runoff, which is why we provided the calculation for the water levels, of the flooding, the impacts and how that alters the wetland. We agree. Again, the peak rates are having to do with off-site flooding. We're not flooding our own property. So we're proving that the elevation stayed the same. And then we also prove that as the water leaves the site, we're not flooding our neighbors. We can't do that. That's why you measure out the property line. Internal to the site, we want to make sure that the wetlands are respected from a water quality standpoint, and all of the water that goes into those areas, whether it's a natural wetland, whether it was a basin that is classified as a wetland, that clean water is going into those, and unequivocally clean treated water above the standards is going into the wetlands, whether it's the on-site wetlands or whether it's an off-site wetlands. Water is clean and treated in excess of the standard. The issue has to do with the rate of the runoff. And again, the rate, we are measuring the rates at the design points at the property lines, not at the internal wetlands.
If I may speak to that again. The project as designed, using the existing wetlands as detention basins, show that they meet the peak flows. Per the stormwater standards, you are not allowed to use existing wetlands to provide stormwater management. So thus, by using those existing wetlands, you have not necessarily proven that the peak flows have been met for stormwater standards.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, sorry. So that's basically the root of the disagreement, and why there just makes no sense to try to respond technically any further to the peer review. It's a disagreement we're not going to resolve. We believe that we've submitted all of the information that the commission needs to be able to render. We're looking to have the hearing closed and have a decision rendered.
So at this point, the applicant is not going to move forward with any additional design changes or tweaks to try to mitigate any of the open issues that still remain unresolved. Is that true?
That's correct. To address the questions that Ms. Bell is raising would involve a dramatic redesign of the site to address an issue that we don't think legally is a regulatory requirement.
Okay. So I'm going to put this out on the table now. I am not prepared to close this hearing tonight. Given the situation of COVID-19 and these remote meetings and so forth, I want to make sure that the public has got ample opportunity to provide comment. And, you know, it's perfectly okay for them to provide written comment to us if they're not able to, you know, have technology available to them. They don't own it. The library's not open or whatever they need access to be able to do that. You know, we're moving forward with trying to, you know, accommodate applicants as yourselves and others, given this difficult time, and do remote Zoom meetings like this and move things forward. Under the governor's state of emergency, we could just wait until that emergency is lifted and 45 days later start our meetings. We've chosen to try to accommodate the public in whatever way we can by doing these meetings. So I'm hoping that the applicant, you will give us a little latitude here, given the situation, and allow us to collect public comment from the public. And you know, having this meeting is a good baseline. I understand where you're at. I didn't know if coming here tonight we're going to present some new information. Potentially you could have, you may have, but you really established, you know, where we are from a baseline point of view at this stage. So we do have other participants in the meeting. We want to open it up for any public comments at this point that could possibly come on, Melissa.
Yeah, and we
You
did
raised
get,
hands out there.
I'm sure they'll start now. We did get one written comment that I'll read quickly. It says, I'm Tom Gittin, the 73 Flag Road. My question is to the commission. I looked at the notes from the peer review by Fuss and O'Neill of the storm drain plan. They seem to say, if I understand correctly, that the current plan is inadequate. Oh my gosh, inadequate. Is that correct? And if moving forward, will there be a bond posted to protect me if the engineers are correct and my property is adversely impacted? I don't know if we want to discuss that first before I look at some of the other hands that are up.
We haven't had any discussion about bonds, and over the 20+ years I've been on the Conservation Commission, we've never done that. I'm not even sure we can do that. It's typically a planning board thing.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any background or history of such a thing?
If you'd like me to address it.
Rebecca?
I will.
Lacey?
I can just speak to that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that there's not established authority for a Conservation Commission to require a bond for a project. I think there arguably could be authority, but we would have to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit more. And I would say, but also, well, and I would say the specific concern that the abutter has raised, in my view, is an issue that would be directly between the two property owners, and is something that the town, sort of beyond what the town would normally keep control over. You know, a planning board, a bond regarding, you know, subdivision construction basically is there to just guarantee that the subdivision is constructed as designed, so that the town isn't left with, you know, a half constructed development with no good road and so forth. And the same, and so the situation here isn't really analogous in terms of protecting downstream abutters from impacts. That's really something that, I mean, the commission does their job and looks at the legal standards and the technical standards, but ultimately, if there are effects on downstream properties, that's something that the property owners have to resolve between themselves.
All right, thank you.
There was a kind of a follow-up that says, does the peer reviewer believe my water table may rise as a result?
Do we also want to give Park Central the chance to respond to the question in the chat?
I think Mr. Watsky was going to, Attorney Lacey answered. I don't know, Mr. Watsky, you have anything more to add? Attorney Watsky?
I'd be glad to very briefly. Just, I think I would be somewhat more absolute than Attorney Lacy was. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, there is no authority for a Conservation Commission to impose a bond. So the answer to that is no, there just isn't authority to do it. But I'd say under the facts as you've been presented them in this case, there's also absolutely no indication from any of the technical information that you have, including from your own peer reviewers, that there's a risk of flooding of abutting properties. So it's not a concern that's supported by the record. The concerns that your peer reviewers have expressed are extremely technical in nature and have to do with their interpretation of regulatory compliance with regard to discharges into the wetlands on this site. There have been no concerns expressed about flooding of abutters. So that's how I would respond to that person's comment.
All right, thank you. Okay, Melissa, any raised hands? You're muted.
Yes, so there is. So the first person who raised it is Jeff Walsh, who I'll allow to talk. Jeff, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering, working on behalf of Dr. Majid Yazdani of Bantry Road. Fuss & O'Neill's analysis of compliance with standard number 2 relative to the stormwater point source discharges to the on-site wetlands, that analysis is spot on. I fully support their opinion, and I am of the same opinion. Quite frankly, the 10 stormwater standards are meant to protect wetland resource areas. They don't speak to flooding directly. They don't speak only to flooding of offsite properties. They speak to wetlands and addressing stormwater discharges to the wetlands. In this case, you have on-site wetlands, which make it a little more difficult to analyze, but it's very clear to both Fuss & O'Neill and Graves Engineering that the proper location to look at compliance with the 10 standards is in fact the point source discharges. They failed to comply with standard number 2 at those discharges. They certainly can further evaluate point source discharges at the property boundaries as they did. There's nothing wrong with supplementing their analysis at the wetland boundaries with the analysis at the property lines, but the analysis at the property lines itself does not constitute compliance with standard number 2. I would call your attention to the documents our firm has submitted, the oral presentations we've made during the public hearing process. And I'd like to remind the commission that a reference was made to the Weiss Farm Apartments case. And that is very similar to this in the subject matter of whether to evaluate compliance at the property boundary or at the on-site wetland. The difference between the two projects is that in the Weiss Farm Apartments project, the design engineer did in fact evaluate the peak rates at the on-site wetlands, unlike the Park Central project. So the subject matter is the same, but the way the two projects were attacked was differently. Lastly, I had one more point to make, and I apologize for the delay here, but I lost my note on that. I'd urge the commission to really look strong and hard at this. I'm hearing the commission is being presented by the applicant that they'll go to DEP if in fact the DEP doesn't find in the applicant's favor in this issue. And quite frankly, this would be a great case to get to DEP to set the record straight and fully support the Weiss Farm decision, as well as the points you're hearing from your peer review engineer, as well as from our firm. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your time and allowing me to respond to the issues raised, and I just wanted to remind everyone of our position and the information we've submitted. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any others, Melissa?
Yep, there's Attorney Stevens.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission.
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me?
Barely. You sound like you're in a tunnel.
Sorry, I'll step closer. I'm sorry about that. Is this better?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I do Zoom meetings all day long, so.
Good. I'm just too far from my microphone. My apologies. Thanks. I will be brief. I also represent Dr. Yazdani along with Jeff Walsh, who you just heard from. And I just wanted to remind the commission of our letter, my letter to the commission dated March 25th, 2020, addressing this issue that everyone has identified this evening as the point of disagreement. And just remind the commission that we also share the opinion of your special counsel, Rebecca Lacey, as well as your peer review consultants, that BVW, bank, and land underwater cannot be used for the impoundment or detention of stormwater. That's provided in the wetlands regulations. There has been in the record and in some of the writings, and it's been alluded to a little bit tonight about some exceptions to that rule, and that exception is only for stormwater systems that were designed, constructed, installed, or improved on or after November 18th, 1996. The regulations place the burden, as you may know, on the applicant to prove that by presenting the commission with best evidence, and the regulations define best evidence as an order of conditions or order of resource area delineation with the accompanying plans. The applicant has failed this and failed this by about 13 years. They've only provided a copy of the 1983 order of conditions that allowed construction of the project. We've heard various dates this evening from about when it was constructed, but in any event, it was certainly earlier and well before the cutoff point. So the applicant cannot avail itself of this exception. Any discussion about maintenance is really a red herring, a distraction from the commission, a distraction to to have the commission hopefully forget what the actual standard is. So we ask the commission to ignore any discussion in the record or about maintenance activities that may have been there. Most importantly, it's not relevant. And secondly, the applicant has not provided any credible evidence to that. And then again, we just remind the commission, as it's been discussed before, your February 2016 order of resource area delineation showed these areas that the applicant is now proposing to use to impound or detain stormwater. And that those plans that you approved identified those areas as resource areas. And there was no notation on the plans at all that those had been or are being used as stormwater. So for these reasons, we urge you to deny the project for, among other things, failure to meet the stormwater standards as have been discussed this evening. I also, just two more comments if I may. We also submitted a letter earlier on in this process in August 9th, 2019, that just discussed our opinion is that your bylaw and your stormwater bylaw does apply to the portions of this project that are not part of the 40B permit, not part of the comprehensive permit. And for a number of reasons, first of all, the comprehensive permit itself is clear in the language that the ZBA used, that the 40B project is not the entire project that's before you this evening. The only part of the 40B project is the apartment building, the pool, the patio, and the parking areas around that, as well as the access road and perhaps the water treatment plant. In addition, just common sense, this entire project is not a 40B project because it does not have the requisite number of affordable housing units. If it did, some of the townhouse units that they're proposing to build, I think we're down to 123, would have to be affordable units, and there's no mention of that. So it's just not credible to say that this entire project is part of the 40B project and therefore exempt from your bylaw. I'd also echo Jeff Walsh's comment about perhaps this case should go to DEP for interpretation of this provision that there is disagreement about. The applicant previously sort of, I would say, a veiled threat to the commission that if you deny it, you will lose control. I would not agree with that. Certainly, the commission has the authority to administer and enforce the Wetlands Protection Act, even under an SOC. I mean, granted, you might not, DEP may not keep all the particular special conditions that you might want, but you certainly will not lose control completely of this project. So thank you very much for your time. And if you need copies of my letters, I could certainly send them again. I didn't see them on the document list that was of all the other submittals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other hands raised, Melissa?
I just see Attorney Watsky raise his hand. You wanted to speak?
Is that the last one or no?
That's the only one that I see.
Okay.
There were a couple fluttering before, but none of them are up. So if anyone wants to make a comment, please. Oh, there. He keeps going up and down. Hold on one second. I think Jack is trying to. Jack, are you there? You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
You hear me now?
Yep.
It says Gail.
This is Gail. That's my better half. All right. For a minute there, I was afraid I wasn't even in this meeting, so I'm happy that you recognized me here.
I can barely hear you though. You got to get close to the mic.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about my letter. I sent a letter. Bruce Solik and Associates did a letter, and they sent it to me on July 8th, 2020. It was forwarded to everybody, I think, on July 10th. And then I believe it was forwarded to Fuss and O'Neill. Since then, there's been some discussions with Bowler, and they've agreed to everything that's on this letter for me. For everybody who doesn't know, I'm on the Flag Road. I'm on the downhill discharge from, I guess it's basin number 1. And basin number 1 is drained by a 2-inch pipe. So the operation and maintenance is crucial in this design. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so that's why I really wanted these things on the plan ahead of time. Because quite frankly, I think that we've worked with Bowler for a while here now. And I don't know if the commission has, you mentioned my letter, but has Fuss and O'Neill or anybody gone over my letter at all? Nobody.
Melissa, can you comment on that?
So I think, like we discussed at our last in-person meeting, it's been distributed to the peer reviewers. I think Amy, made the comment that while it wasn't directly addressed because our peer reviewers work for the commission, not, to analyze what we asked them to, she didn't directly respond to them, but the comments are, been addressed through the myriad of letters.
Okay. As John Cusick said from Bowler, they've agreed to all of these. One of them is and I want the board to realize this, is the town officials have been given the right to access the property to perform inspections on the stormwater system. And the other thing is that I'm kind of wondering, it's not on the plan yet. And somebody said tonight that this project meets the DEP standards and we're going to go to DEP. And I expressed to John Cusick this afternoon, I don't want to get left behind. I've been coming to these meetings for 3.5 years like everybody else. And I don't know how these things aren't not on a plan yet, but they're not. And what bothers me is that if this is not the final plan and this is going to DEP because it already meets the DEP regulations according to the team over there, then when does my stuff get put on? And is there another plan that will be drawn for DEP? Or am I misunderstanding this? And so, I mean, it seems to me, I don't think I'm asking too much to have this put on the plan. But I don't know. I just don't understand where I head from here, because it sounds, I hear the frustrations in the capital group saying, well, we're going to DEP because we're not meeting you guys can't agree on the wetland standard. But the wetland standards has nothing to do with me. I'm at the other end of the pipe that's draining all this. So the operation and maintenance is critical. The stuff that has to go on the plans to me is critical. And, you know, I just don't know. I mean, when you get to DEP and DEP says, oh yeah, well, draw your final plan and we'll look at that. And I've asked, you know, Bowler has said they're willing to do it, but I don't know when it gets done. And that kind of bothers me. And that's really kind of the crux of the matter here. I do have a couple of things that I picked up on tonight. It appears that, I mean, we've got one plan already out there, but now, and that hasn't been withdrawn, but we have this new plan, and that's fine, and it seems to be better, and I guess it's better for me. And then we keep talking about 126 units, but Mr. Stevens just alluded to the fact that there's, you know, the apartment houses, so we're 314 units. And I assume, my engineer looked at this, that all of this is all together, and that the point source on catch basin or on stormwater basin number 1 is in compliance. And if it is, then I think that all I want to do is have these things put on with a very strong operation and maintenance plan that is going to protect the 2-inch pipe. And that's really, I'll wait for comment from the board on what happens here.
So, Mr. Biley, I had brought that up earlier, and the answer that I got back from the applicant was they were not making changes to the plan. They were not going to submit the O&M details now. We're waiting for the commission to make a decision. And one of the things that is difficult for me as a commission member is to make a decision on an application that still is not 100% complete with details. I think Mr. Pete mentioned the same thing.
Yeah, that was,
So-
I had your letter open when I was asking that question for that exact reason. We have a letter from Bowler saying, yes, we're going to make changes. We're going to add all these things. And then we heard a statement that a decision is requested, and I didn't know how to parse those two messages.
To the chair, Mark?
Yes.
Mark, can I just make a quick comment on that?
Oh, who's Matt? Okay.
This is Matt Verrill from Lucas. I know that between a letter from from Attorney Watsky and then the response from, I believe, from Attorney Lacy, there was some discussion about sort of when things need to be submitted and the commission not being allowed to have special conditions that require materials be submitted sort of after the permit's been issued. So I don't know if perhaps Attorney Lacy could speak to that as far as procedurally. Obviously, the applicant has the right to say, no, we're not submitting anything else. But if the commission isn't allowed to require supplemental information after the fact in the event of an approval, then, you know, when is that material to be submitted?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to speak to that?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
So yeah, from a legal standpoint, well, without going into the various legal ramifications, it's just a best practice to the extent that there are any approvals, there are any further judgment calls that the commission needs to make. The best practice is to, as the two commission members are indicating, to have that all happen during the hearing, and before the approval happens. anything that remains unresolved, I would definitely recommend resolving it as part of the hearing rather than putting it as a permanent condition. Aside from the legal aspects and the cases that there have been, to some extent, there's just a practical issue of if you have a condition that of a submission that requires approval, but then there's disagreement, and then that's disapproved, and there's disagreement over that. It's sort of unclear how that gets resolved. It just sort of turns into a bit of a mess from a practical and procedural standpoint. One thing I would say is I don't want to complicate things by suggesting this, but it does seem possible to me that the commission could make sort of some kind of two-part decision, in the sense that you could make a finding regarding kind of this key unresolved question. And if you find, for instance, that you agree with the applicant on this key unresolved question, you could then, move to the next step of saying, okay, we're going to find in your favor on this stormwater issue, but there are all these various additional things that we need to see before we can actually vote to issue the final order of conditions. So that would be one way to sequence getting that last information.
Yeah, I find it somewhat difficult to add, special conditions that have, design details that still haven't been hashed out or ironed out, where, the public doesn't have any chance to see it, comment on it. It's just in a set of conditions, and they're then just being put out there the way they are. And that just doesn't seem to be a right process to me.
Yeah, I would agree from a legal standpoint.
Am I
So,
still on?
Mr. Chairman, it's John Cuse, if I could respond to that.
I'm trying to look for the yellow box that's lighting up here. My head's on a swivel.
No, thank you for hearing me. Again, what is being asked for is very minor, and it's above and beyond what would otherwise be required, but we're agreeing to do it. I mean, we simply could just condition any approval to addressing the letter that Mr. Bartolini has submitted. It really does not impact, one iota of any of the larger issues that we've been talking about. It has to do with allowing the commission to inspect the property, which we have no problem with. We're not trying to hide anything. Just in the interest of trying to move this forward and trying to avoid, multiple pounds of paper going back and forth and multiple peer reviews from 2 peer reviewers and engineers and attorneys going back and forth. It's just getting long, and really we're printing a lot of paper here. For this issue, I think it's very, very simple just to, the applicant's acknowledging we have no issue. We will absolutely work with this abutter. He's submitted a letter, and you can simply say, if you were going to approve it, conditioned on, addressing these and showing it on a final plan. And there's really nothing to show on a final plan short of a adjusted trash rack and then O&M issues. It's very minor, and we're happy to do it. But to delay the process, to submit more plans, to go through more reviews for something that is really, not what we've been arguing about right now, doesn't seem fruitful.
Mr. Chairman, this is Scott Goddard. If I could add another comment to John's comment as well. So I don't think this consulting team and applicant has showed any lack of desire to answer every question ad nauseum that's come about on this project. We've spent a lot of time, hundreds of pages of information, significant back and forth, a lot of time by your consultants and a lot of time on our end as well to give you a thorough package. So there's anything but a lack of information. If anything, there's probably too much information that's been before everybody on this project. So if it came down to we just need an O&M plan, we need a trash rack, these kind of things, I think you've seen and demonstrated that by the actions of this application that we would do any of those things without much trouble, right? But we're at this, if we had a direction from the commission that there was a vote on this decision about how we're going to treat the stormwater management question, and all it meant to do was put a couple of close up a couple buttons on some holes to get there after we had that big picture affirmation or rejection, then that's not going to be a problem, right? But if But if we can't get there past the stormwater question, which we think we have satisfied, then, we might as well, move the ball forward to a closing. So, this is, just to be clear, we have not lacked in any submission of information to the Conservation Commission or its peer reviewers. We've given you guys everything and then some.
Mark, can I make a comment? This is Chris Lucas.
Yes, go ahead.
Early on in the process, Matt and I had asked the applicant to provide an alternative, taking the wetlands out of the stormwater train and designing the site in compliance with the stormwater standards as we recommended and Fuss and O'Neill had recommended. This was several meetings ago before COVID and whatnot. And I believe you and possibly Ben, I could be wrong who spoke, but I do recall 2 commission members had brought this up as well, that the commission would have liked to have seen an alternative. I know the applicant mentioned it would result in the reduction in the design of the site, but we never actually received any documentation on that, what the site would look like, what the reduction would be, where it would be. We never received anything. I'm only bringing that up now because there's a debate going on if all the information has been provided. We still feel that would be a good alternative, just in a conceptual form, to see what the site would look like. I think it would be useful for the commission to see what it would look like doing the design the way we believe it should be done to follow the regulations and the stormwater management standards. I'm just putting that out there for the commission to consider, because that was something that was focused on early on in the process. And I don't think there's been a lot of discussion, or if it was, it's been several months ago. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, may I weigh in on a number of issues, please? This is Matt Watsky.
Sure, Mr. Watsky, Attorney Watsky.
All right, thanks. So first, I guess I'll start with the response to what Attorney Stevens commented, that the project is not all a 40B project, and that you have jurisdiction over your local bylaws to impose them on this project. I think just to reiterate our position on the record, we disagree. The project as a whole, with all of the local wetland protection and stormwater bylaws applicable to this project. The Housing Appeals Committee decisions are very clear that a project that includes non-40B market rate components can have the entire project subject to 40B. If the HAC is satisfied that the non-40B market rate components are necessary to make the project cost effective, and that's the decision that we have. This is just, it's not an issue for dispute in this forum. So we are not agreeing that there are any local bylaw or regulatory controls applicable to this project. This is an application under the Wetlands Protection Act, period. Second item, regarding Mr. Bartolini, it is very common for an order of conditions to reference documents that are in the record to the extent that those documents are relevant. It'd be a very simple thing for the Conservation Commission, if you choose to vote to approve this project, to reference the letter submitted on Mr. Bartolini's behalf, and then the bolder letter saying we accept that requirement, and then include a condition saying as documented in those 2 documents that these items will be addressed as a condition of the approval. That's part of the record already. With regard to what Mr. Lucas just noted, we never agreed to submit for the commission's review an alternative plan. We agreed that we would analyze the question. We did. We concluded it is not cost effective for the project to go there, and it's simply not something that's in front of the commission for its consideration. So we're not agreeing to provide another alternative plan for the commission to review and for Mr. Lucas to write another 40-page letter. Sorry, that was perhaps snarky. I shouldn't have gone there. My apology. And then finally, the question about how to wrap this up. The chairman commented about leaving the hearing open. We're not we're not willing to leave the hearing open under the governor's order suspending state permitting deadlines. That's COVID-19 order number 17. The commission does have the authority to delay opening a hearing. It also has the authority to extend the deadline regardless of the Wetlands Protection Act statutory requirement for when it has to issue an order following the close of a hearing. So you have authority to take more time to issue a decision, but that order, COVID-19 order number 17, does not authorize the commission to insist that a public hearing remain open indefinitely. Applicant. And this applicant has decided the record is complete and we're not prepared to proceed with this hearing getting continued any further. It's time to close it, and you can take however much time to deliberate that you need.
Excuse me, Mark?
Yes.
This is Matt from LE. I'd like to respond to Attorney Watsky's comment about not agreeing to submit the conceptual drawings. I'm reading from my notes of October 2nd of 2019. Was a meeting at the town hall between the consultants and the peer reviewers, starting at 9:30 a.m. And I'll just read directly from my notes here. Under the, let's see. So it's a Fuss and O'Neill comments review. Bowler reiterated the bylaw does not apply, although they were trying to meet most bylaw requirements. They stated no units are grading within the 20-foot buffer zone, only road impacts. But the state stormwater standards are being met. Volume requirement is not being met as required in bylaw. Amy expressed concerns over impacts to wetlands by increased volumes. And then it says MV, referring to me, recommended demonstrating design changes needed if volumes were to be matched. Bowler agreed to provide that plan as requested. And Chris Lucas agreed that that was a potential basis for the Conservation Commission to issue a waiver if such a plan was submitted. So I have my notes here that at that meeting of October 2nd, the applicant's engineer Bowler agreed to provide such a plan.
This is John Cusick from Bowler. Like we said, we were going to analyze the plan and take a look at it, which is what we did.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay. Attorney Lacy, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the issue about continuing the hearing. I disagree with Attorney Watsky about the appropriate legal authority that we're looking at. The governor's order that he mentioned addresses state agency permitting. And here, even though you guys are permitting under a state law, you are a local board. And so the conduct of your hearings is addressed by legislation, Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, which gave various kinds of relief to local permitting boards under the circumstances of the COVID emergency. And I'll just read for the record, section 17B, I think it's 17B5.
It is.
Thank you.
I read it many times.
Okay, so just for everyone's benefit, it says, notwithstanding the time periods by which a permit is to be heard or acted upon, a permit granting authority, which you are under the definition in the statute, may, by a declaration of its chair, schedule or reschedule on one or more occasions the hearing or decision deadlines on a permit application. And then there's just some information about the procedure that must be used and who must be notified. But the chair certainly, as Mr. Chairman, as exactly as you referenced early on in the hearing, you could, at your discretion, continue this until the end of the state of emergency, which could be months from now.
Which I certainly don't intend to do, but I do intend to execute what is in that legislation, which says that I can, without the applicant agreeing, extend the decision of this particular applicant application to, to a date. I don't intend to wait until COVID-19 state of emergency is lifted, plus 45 days after that. But, there is one commission member that was unable to make this meeting tonight, and he's been on the board, associated with this project since the very beginning. And, he does have a vote and a stake into this, I believe. And I would want to have him part of the deliberations. Having this meeting tonight was I think important to baseline everybody as to where we are with the project, where the applicant is with respect to the project, where we are as a commission, and where our consultants and their opinions lie. And I think now we just need a little bit of time, given the fact that we're all doing this from home and remotely. And I think we ought to provide some flexibility around that. And we need to go deliberate this and come back and discuss it and vote at the next meeting, which is in 3 weeks. And this has been going on for years and years and years. I don't think 3 more weeks is going to cause anybody any hardship at all.
This is Matt Watsky. The issue, Mr. Chairman, and I am quite familiar with Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. The commission didn't schedule or reschedule the hearing due to it went ahead with this hearing. The question is whether there's anything further to include in the hearing, and in our view, there is not. And under the Wetlands Protection Act, further extensions or continuances of the hearing have to be with the consent of the applicant, and we're not agreeing to it. I understand that you may very well decide you're not going to bring it to a vote to close the hearing tonight. That's up to you. We are not agreeing to a continuance of the hearing. We think it's time for the commission to go ahead and schedule its deliberation.
Any further comment from other board members?
Speaking of things that may or may not have been included that were discussed in various previous meetings, and I think that same meeting when there was some discussion of an alternatives analysis, there was also a short conversation about the fact that the local bylaw isn't applied because they don't agree, but there was an agreement on behalf of the Park Central group to include some rules that the homeowners in the development would not be allowed to disturb the 20-foot buffer, even though notionally this would be built as a 40B, but that they would basically put a rule in that the homeowners couldn't work within the 20-foot. Is that included in the current version? Because I didn't see it, but it's very possible that I missed it.
I'd be glad to address that, Mr. Chairman. This is Matt Watsky.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
The answer is that's precisely the kind of condition that gets included in a special condition of an approval. And the special condition can specify that that there's no further alteration permissible within the 20-foot buffer for any of the land subject to this order. And it could also require that limitation be included in the condominium documents so that it's part of the line of title, but it's not something to put into the plans. It's easily something included in the condition of an approval. We'll accept it.
Okay, anybody else have their hands raised, Melissa?
Jack, did you have any other questions? I think he's still sitting here.
You're talking Jack Bartolini?
Yep.
No, it appears that everything is going to be done in the record, and I really just wanted to get it on the record for sure. I don't know where you guys are headed with this. My biggest concern was to go to DEP and get lost in the shuffle, even though everybody says, "Oh yeah, we'll be okay." And that's what bothers me. But now I've heard the attorney say it, the engineers said it, you guys have said it. So I'll be really upset if this does not get on a plan. But no, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, all right, thank you. There is 3 people with their hands up. So first is Jeff Walsh again. Jeff,
Thank you. Everyone can hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Earlier this evening, Commissioner Guyer asked about what's the difference between the project before you now versus the 2016 project. And that was my last thing that I wanted to present to the board. With respect to stormwater management, the difference between the 2 projects is that the 2016 project did not comply with standard number 2, attenuation of peak rates of runoff to the on-site wetlands, nor did it comply with standard number 4, the treatment for water quality before water is discharged to the on-site wetlands. The plans before you now do in fact address standard number 4, discharges to the on-site wetlands with respect to quality, but still fail to address standard number 2. I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, so next is Tom Gittens. Tom, if you unmute yourself, you are up. There you go.
Now, can you hear me? Hi, this is Tom Gittens from 73 Flag Road. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
First off, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to just follow up on, and I'm not sure if my question is permitted or not, but I want to follow up on my question before. Like Jack, I live down the hill, so my concern is about the water coming down the hill when they build all this stuff on top of the hill, and either flooding across the surface or more likely raising my water tables. You know, as a result of that, giving me a wet basement and all those kind of things. The capital team, I want to acknowledge, answered that question from their perspective, but I was wondering, Mr. Chairman, if in fact the engineers looked at that as part of their review for you, and whether they would comment on whether in fact I have reason to be concerned, or if in fact it's just really unlikely, either in the, you know, the 1 or 10 or 100-year flood situation. Thank you.
I'll let the applicant's engineer answer that if he would, please.
I heard the applicant's engineer, sir. I was just wondering if our own engineers.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted the applicant's engineer to respond.
In fact, I asked this question 3 years ago, and the applicant's engineers answered it at that time and gave pretty much the same answer. And I don't mean to disrespect their answer, but when we have somebody on our side, not on our side, because I think Capital Group is as good a group as any group in the town. You know, I'd like to hear an impartial perspective. Thank you.
Sure. Amy, do you want to address that, please?
I have to apologize. I am not good at being put on the spot for answering questions. I'm trying to think through something at the moment.
Well, I'm right down the hill from the.
Yeah, I think the main point is that post-development, the increased runoff coming from the site will not be more than it is now. It may flow longer than it does now. It probably will, but it won't be any more than now. I believe that statement's correct.
And the water tables won't come up as a result.
Now I can't hear you.
I don't know. Did you mute me?
No, you're just very quiet.
I said the water tables will not come up.
As a concern to the water tables, without having further calculations completed for groundwater mounding and things like that in those areas, I can't necessarily say yes or no on if the water tables will increase. And as far as any additional flow that may leave the site after the development, as currently designed by the applicant, with using these existing wetlands to meet peak flows. They do show that the peak flows are reduced. I do not remember off the top of my head what the volumes are without going back into the calculations to see if the volumes will be reduced at that specific location that you are concerned about. So unfortunately, at this time, I can't fully address as far as volume is concerned.
Yeah, I tried to read the documents and it seemed like it went from 10 CFS to 20 CFS, but I don't know what that means at all. So I couldn't really draw any conclusion. And I don't want to be hysterical about this. I'm just wondering whether there's anything I need to be concerned about.
That's about as best as I can answer without really further diving into and relooking at all the calculations at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
All right, there is one more, Howard Rose.
Greetings. I just wanted to thank the chair for
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Howard Rose, 2 Bantry Road.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for your measured response to deliberating this project. I think it is important that the entire town does have the opportunity to review this meeting. I know many people don't get to see it online in this forum. Doing this online and not in person is incredibly challenging. So your measured response to allow people the time to submit letters is greatly appreciated. I hope you won't back down on that this evening. It's also, it's a shame that it seems we're having the same discussion about the same rule that we did 3.5 years ago when we're right back to the same point. So I hope you would find a similar finding and again, not be, threaten's not the right word, but not be taken back by some of the comments of Park Central on the threat of bringing this to the state. So thank you again for being here, doing what you do, and for your measured response to get everyone to see something on such a huge project for our town. So thank you.
Thank you. So one last point I have, and Attorney Lacy, let me know if I'm on solid ground here or not, but I do not want to close this hearing tonight. I do want to keep it open. It will be on YouTube for people to watch. And if they, do not have access to technology, I want to have the public an opportunity to be able to provide a letter. And they have 3 weeks to be able to get that letter into us so that we can, use that during our deliberations 3 weeks from now at our next meeting. I just want to make sure that we're on solid ground with respect to the legislature and this being a COVID-19 environment.
Yeah, so, excuse me, I think it would be good for you to specifically state for the record that, well, and I'll just state the statement that should be made and you can just adopt my statement, that pursuant to your authority under Section 17B5 of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, you are making a declaration that you are going to continue this hearing. You're going to, reschedule the hearing to be continued at the commission's next meeting. And you will provide the applicable written notice as and posting as required by the statute.
Yeah, so as chair of the Southfield Conservation Commission, I adopt that. And I want to further amend it by saying that any public comment letter that we receive in the commission at the town hall or our conservation administrator will also make sure that goes to the applicant as well, so that they have access to that. So that said, then I'm making a decision to continue this hearing to August 20th. And do we have a time yet?
We can do 7:30, I think, like we were tonight.
7:30 p.m. I don't know that that requires a vote, does it?
It does not. You are.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep, you can just do it upon your own declaration.
Okay, I think that concludes this hearing for tonight. Any last comments from anyone? Commission members, applicants?
Thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that ends the public hearings that we have this evening.
Does it? What about number 4?
Circling back around to that, so Westford or Westwood was not on the plan. He went in the office, but he did have a reference to North Roads Board of Health someplace.
In another plan. So that was in lot 5, which we continued anyways. So it's
I'm
just
sorry.
lot 4 that we can close.
So lot
and-
4 is clean.
Lot 4 is clean.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I'm all set, correct?
Yes, you
Part-time?
are. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Mark,
Okay.
on that note, I don't think you need me here anymore, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. You got a diaper to change?
No, you went to bed a little while ago. That was when I switched rooms, if you noticed.
I did notice that.
I switched after you went to bed.
Right after we
Alright.
close this this next hearing, I need a quick bio break. Sorry, folks.
But it's good seeing you all again.
You as well. Nice haircut, by the way.
Growing along. All right. Have a good night.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to close lot 4 Grandin Road, map 50, lot 51? Close that hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Watson. You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Judith
Watson,
Watson, you're, there we go.
Oi, yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes. Sherry, you there?
Sleeping. I don't blame him.
Let me, sorry, yes.
Okay, Pasamato.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Request for certificate of compliance 5 Burnett Road, DEP 29891.
Are we
Think
doing
Matt-
minutes first or
Oh,
Oh, I skipped over those.
skipped over 2 things, but that's okay.
okay.
What was the other one?
84 Main.
Oh. What agenda is this one? Oh, I threw the wrong one away.
That's all right. So it was minutes first and then 84
Okay.
Main. So I just texted Peter, so.
Okay, minutes first. Any comments or changes to the minutes of 6/18/2020? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of 6/18/2020?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Watson,
Yes.
Pete.
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes. Okay, any comments or edits to the minutes of 7/9/2020? Okay, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as July 9th, 2020?
So moved.
Okay, here a second?
Second,
Okay, roll call vote?
Watson,
yes.
Pete.
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yep.
Pasamato.
Yep.
All right. And I think Peter's back.
You didn't go to bed?
No.
Unmute. Here I am. I'm here.
Hi.
Thank you. So 84 Main, we have completed what I call the first phase of work along the embankment. Melissa, do you have
Yeah.
those that email? Okay, thank you. So
Which one do you want me to put up?
the email with the three pictures, if you would.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't have a picture of actually what's completed so far, but I'm trust that most of you have driven down Deerfoot Road at least once to see what we've done. So basically, this is what was there back in, I think this picture's 1890. So when we did the work, we found a lot of rocks, obviously. So basically, years and years of neglect allowed all that vegetation to grow up along the aqueduct. So we did strip all of that. We put down a very dense geotextile fabric. I actually had two choices to use, and we used the one that was twice as costly, just to be sure that we wouldn't have to worry about any plants growing through it. Because these roots were pretty deep. And then we've put the riprap on top. So I got communication from DCR. They had hoped that we wouldn't be going up the embankment as much as they did. I actually didn't want it to go up as high as they did. We'll try to bring it back a bit. But what DCR has asked us to do is have at least a minimum of a 10-foot strip. We're going to try to get a 15-foot strip of wildflower at the top of the riprap. And so what the assurance to DCR is that through the rest of their land, there will be a strip of wildflower. And I found two varieties that the group out in Amherst had. And then I was able to look at the differences between the two of them. One they call a New England showy wildflower mix. It's a little bit more money. And that includes 3 wildflowers that the other one doesn't. It has lupine, milkweed, and golden top. Then the New England wildflower mix has the same variety of all the other ones, black-eyed Susans, blue stem, things like that. But it also has 2 asters, and there are no asters other than smooth aster in the showy. So what I had suggested to Melissa was that I would probably get 5 pounds of each, and then just mix that along with the sheep's grass to ensure that we got the most variety that we could get from the Massachusetts supplier of native wildflower mix. So that's a given. And then what Mr. Pascoli had wanted to do instead of the wildflower mix, but we're retracting from that, was he had wanted to put lavender and hydrangea. And so to continue with that thought, I would like to have some separation from the lawn to the wildflower so that we know that the riprap's going to be along the embankment. At the top of it, we'll have a strip of wildflower that's at least 10 feet wide, if not 15 feet wide. And then I was thinking of a planting bed that could be a row of lavender. Would just be like an edging material. And then we would have bubble plantings where the lavender would then surround a cluster of the hydrangeas. And there are 2 other pictures on this email to show the lavender and the hydrangeas. For those who don't know lavender, it's this purple plant. Both of them are very traditional, old, historic properties like this. They would have these formal gardens with lavender and hydrangea. The plus, so for those who may not necessarily appreciate the lavender and the hydrangea like Mr. Pascoli does, and this is definitely what he would like to have there, it's the theme of what he's trying to create. What I'm viewing is that just from an environmental perspective, we're eliminating even more lawn. So my takeaway is that I'm putting in some plants and creating greater separation from the aqueduct and taking away manicured lawn at the same time. And I'm not going to just do this on my own. I had suggested to Melissa that she could come out there with me. We could take a can of spray paint and kind of mark where these bubble planting areas would go. And that way that, this wasn't just being done on our part, that we would have your agent directly involved in how we did the planting. Because of this heavy heat that we've been having, we're not going to try to embark on this right now. what I had said to Melissa was we'd wait till the beginning of September, and hopefully temperatures would moderate a bit, and then we would plant the wildflower. The wildflower is probably not, we're not going to see much activity with that seed bank in the fall, but we'd be ready for spring.
Yeah. I don't even know if planting it that early is appropriate, Mr. Bemis.
Okay.
I believe that it,
Mr. Gregory.
I believe that it goes, like you want to do it like right at frost or something, so that seed doesn't germinate until next year.
Okay. I definitely
And also,
grass
the
down.
other thing that I questioned was the sheep's grass.
That's what we were told to use with it. What you're
But
saying?
I'm just curious because I had some at a property that it seemed as though the grass took over too much. Just be very careful of that. That's all, I guess.
I don't want to have a surface that would be erodible through the.
No, you don't.
So I'd also told Melissa that I was willing to put down a Curlex blanket, which we've had good luck with. It's biodegradable. I probably could get through the entire winter with it. So that may be another option. Is I'll do a little bit more research and again rely upon Melissa to participate in this and provide her with those records. You're going to have one more meeting too between now and when I'd actually do the work. So at the earliest. So we could push this off to the next meeting. I don't like the thought of being behind the last project again, but I get it. So you can put me on the end and then have Melissa call me again.
I think the majority of the discussion was had tonight with respect to that application.
All right. Well, so I did have communication with DCR. They've been kind of communicating directly, although in many of the times I would copy Melissa with the email. But Kelly Frieda from DCR has reported back, and I personally, again, we took out a lot of invasive plant material here, truckloads. This is with a large off-road truck. So a great deal of effort was put into doing this. And frankly, I just think it looks a lot better than it did. So thank you for the opportunity to do the work.
Mark, there is someone with their hand up. I don't know if you want me to bring them in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Freddie, are you there?
Yep. Hi, it's Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission. We have not had the opportunity to discuss this, but there was some communication. We'd be weighing in on the native plant mix, and we're not against the New England wetland plant mixes that were discussed. I should say we've recommended them in other projects, but some of the conversation here is a little concerning compared to what we saw in the approved prior decision. And we recognize that rock, I just guess there's some questions that DCR, the historical look is not done, was not done after the Wetlands Protection Act came into play. And I don't think having all that rock there is what was listed in your decision before. And I was hoping there'd be some opportunity to go through and look at that. I'm also not sure where these bubbles, and I will certainly say on any land that is in the DCR land, it's inappropriate to have lavender or hydrangea. I don't know where this bubbles are, if they're on the property of the Burnett House or if they're on public property, if they're within the permitting for the wetlands, because they just don't provide the benefit that the native plants do for why you have wetland protection habitat requirements for our native habitat. And the hydrangea and lavender may be beautiful garden plants and are certainly appropriate to reduce lawn, but not where a requirement is under a Wetlands Protection Act of the Conservation Commission. That's our position for any planting that's a required permit should be a native plant. We are so far away from where we need to be for protecting our, not just the pollinators, but all wildlife that goes up the chain. You know, we are having a collapse of insects at a level that every plant matters. And certainly within your permitting, we're not asking to take away any of the property owner's rights on his land beyond what's required in a permit. And so we just like the opportunity to see what this proposal is before you move forward. And if it actually meets what's been done there was not what, when I first saw it, what I looked at your permit, and it doesn't seem to be what was allowed. And I'm not aware that DCR trumps Conservation Commission and your Wetlands Protection Act permitting.
No, but it is their land.
But doesn't the work have to be done according to your permitting?
It does, but you know, it's not 84 Main Street property. It's not town property, it's DCR property.
So the point I was
so-
just questioning is, I understand it's complicated. It's not 84 Main Street property, but any property owner that wants to do work in the riverfront or waterfront of a, I'm not sure if there's a wetland or a riverfront in that area, needs to have a permit from the Conservation Commission, to my understanding.
Yeah, it does.
And does
And-
DCR have the permit?
Yeah.
No, 84 Main Street does, but it's being done in with review of DCR, right? So DCR has been copied on what they're proposing to do out there, and they've provided detailed comments back.
I'm just, can I just finish, Carl? Sorry, and then I'll be done. I understand that, but doesn't still the project proponent have to comply with what was in the permit you issued for that? And I didn't see that it does. That's all.
Well, right. So they're asking for a change to their planting plan, right? That's what this discussion is.
From what I read, they brought in 6 tons of rock, which was not in the permit that I ever saw you agreed to.
Just to clarify, I guess what we issued, our special conditions were in addition to what DCR also issued. So when we reviewed our amendment, DCR issued a letter and there was riprap and stone proposed. It wasn't, what is there is more than what they were thinking. So their additional letter, 84 Main is pulling back some of the riprap and that will become wildflowers. But the original permit, our conditions were on top of what DCR had already agreed to. So ours were kind of extra special conditions. But the original approval letter did include riprap.
Can I interject for a moment?
Go ahead.
I have a question. I think we may have made a mistake here because we amended the 84 Main Street permit to allow work on somebody else's property. I think who should have been before us to do this work should have been DCR. I mean, we usually require the property owner to file, this would probably require a notice of intent, right, what they were doing, right? It's a mashup. I think we got a mashup here, right? And I think really the applicant should be DCR. So we should hear from DCR what they want to do. And if they want to use Mr. Briscoli to get it done, that's fine, right? But I think we goofed. Maybe we didn't. Or maybe somebody can correct me. But
Carl,
To that
if I could
point-
speak to that.
Yeah.
So a property owner doesn't necessarily have to be the applicant, but they do have to give, when you file a notice of intent, there's a line for the property owner to sign, basically saying that they agree with what you're proposing to do on their land. So just because you're a property owner doesn't mean you have to be the applicant.
Okay.
But you do have to sign off on it. So I think there's some logic to what you're saying there. My only other comment, I guess, that I'll throw out here, just based on watching the history of this project, is it seems like the applicant has a bad habit of building things first and then coming back and asking this commission for permission after the fact. And I'll just leave it at that.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, please make
Okay.
it quick though.
All right, I'll decline.
It couldn't be quick.
And
So-
Carl, also to your point, the property at 84 Main has deeded access down to the shoreline from the original deed. So that's why it was done under this approval, because all they needed was the invasive management plan for approved by conservation and DCR. So that's what instigated this amendment. So
Oh, okay, because this is different from what we usually do. Yeah. It
right,
is.
it's
Yeah,
I understand your thought process. Yeah, but he has the deeded right to do that to that property.
okay, all right, thank you.
So maybe I missed it. Why is there now a lot more riprap than was in the original plan?
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, great. All right. So when they were doing this removal process, as I said, we were finding a great deal of root matter here. We would have been taking down the aqueduct, another on the edge, another like 2 feet to get it all out. It was just, it's that thick and that rampant. That's why we bought this extra material to be able to put this down to act as an iron barrier. So essentially, there's a fabric, it's called a woven geotextile, that we've laid down, a mat, underneath all of that rock. And that's what's going to choke out the plant material so it doesn't grow through. And I couldn't very well put nothing on top of that to hold this down. We came up to the top, in some instances, they came up to the top of the embankment, which is not what I had personally wanted. I had said to them to stop. And we still were finding the root material going up underneath the lawn area, even though it hadn't penetrated the lawn yet.
Peter, are you still there? You kind of went in and out.
We're
muted.
going to go back to the top of the embankment. We're going to pull back some of that stone and we're going to put down, the goal was to give DCR, because in the letter they asked for 10-foot minimum. It will be 100% on the remainder of their property. I know where their boundary is. From their boundary line to the embankment, it will be a minimum of 10 feet wide. We will try to put 15 feet wide because that's what they had asked us to do. So even if it comes onto our property a bit, we will come onto the property and try to get that width from the chapel all the way down to the end where the culvert is. And then on our own property, I'm suggesting that we use the plant material that Mr. Pascoli wanted, which was lavender and hydrangea, to remove more lawn area so that we can ensure that there's a separation between lawn and wildflower. Because I don't want all of a sudden that just to creep back to the edge of the riprap. So we'll have a formal barrier, if you will, of plant material. And I think that's a good thing that can come from this. And I'm willing to do that through Melissa. I have no problem putting it on a plan, but I'd rather go out there and put boots on the ground and determine where that's going to be than just to put it on a plan. That's all. So we can survey it in if we have to.
Hey, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah. Since you really surprised us with all this riprap, I mean, I was, because from what we approved, my takeaway was that there was going to be a wildflower planting along here. Maybe it might be a reasonable thing is if once you get the riprap removed and you satisfy DCR's need, maybe we can come back and talk about the other plantings.
That's fine, Carl. I mean, particularly if Russell's right and I can't get the wildflower seed down, I'm going to have to wait.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the obligation, is to put the wildflower mix down. So I'm going to do that work. I just don't want there to be an erodible surface I have to be concerned about till spring.
Okay, so what are next steps in this? I had to step away for a couple minutes.
Okay. I'm prepared to go out there with Melissa and we'll take a look at it and just report back to you at the next meeting. Let me just do it that way. I'm not going to try to get this done this evening.
Okay.
Peter, could I ask a question? Do you foresee any other variances on this project coming up in the future? I mean, it seems like we do get an awful lot of ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
I'm sorry. I know the two aspects of the project that I've been personally involved in was the rain garden to address the pavement that went down to the carriage house there, the cottage, whatever we want to call it. Actually, that it's reflected in the picture there, the small building that he put in. And then this, I got involved in this and communicated directly with DCR. And like I said, the historic pictures of this are very accurate as to what we've emulated. The goal was just not to come up that far up the embankment, but that was based upon field conditions we were finding. It's basically been, if you look at that picture and you think about the timeline, they probably maintained this through the 20s and 30s, but then they stopped maintaining it. So you had basically 80 years of neglect, and that's what we found there.
So you're saying, I guess I don't know the details, but it's not possible to do the plantings on top of the geotextile?
No, not to the depth that we would have to go to do that. That's the issue. It would be we'd have a significant withdrawal. Whereas at the top of slope, when I get to the top of the embankment, I have no problem digging that down to ensure that the mat's deep enough so that we can grow the wildflowers. So again, I'll be prepared to come to your next meeting and discuss it further. Thank you for the time this evening.
So I guess, Peter, you're hearing from a number of the commission members that, asking for forgiveness is getting kind of old. And maybe, some more drive-bys by you or whoever to make sure they, stay between the lanes here.
Understood.
They seem to weave between the right lane and the fast lane.
Yeah, I understand.
And can we have some drawings for the next meeting? Like what percentage of the part outside DCR's land is going to be bubbles versus not bubbles? How far is that going to go?
I can do that, yes. All of DCR's land would either be riprap or wildflower. I can commit that to you right now. There will be no plantings other than that on DCR's property.
All right, let's move on. We got a few more things to clean up here, and it's getting kind of late.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. All right, can I go on to certificate of compliance for 5 Burnett Road? And I think, Matt and Melissa, we're all set. All looks good.
Yeah, basically, yeah, there were a couple of questions. Russ, can you just confirm that you installed a hood in that catch basin?
I installed the hood in the catch basin. I don't know how we didn't get it there in the first place, but we didn't.
Yeah, and the only other thing was, looked like the basin down in the back needed some maintenance. And the owner said that was happening shortly.
That's correct. This is Venkatesh from 5 Burnett Road. I did inform Melissa that I have an annual contract with a landscaper. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually spoke to him about this, and he said it's part of the schedule and it's going to happen. They're going to clear the area around the basin and the rest of that area, the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
And then I guess the only last thing that I'll mention was I know originally when the enforcement happened on this, there were some fines issued and things. I'll just ask Melissa if that's all squared away and everything.
Yeah, I did look through the record, and there was a $500 fine that was issued and paid. So all the outstanding enforcement orders are finalized.
Okay, is there any reason to not issue the certificate of compliance? All right, so do I hear a vote to issue the certificate of compliance for 5 Burnett Road? DEP number 29891?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Melissa?
Melissa, you're unmuted.
Watson?
Yes.
Pete?
Yep.
Geyer?
Yes.
Gregory?
Yes.
Wittes?
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Been a long night, guys.
Yeah. The next up is request for certificate of compliance, 169 Parkerville Road.
Thank
DEP number
you.
290998.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Venkatesh. I'll email you with the information.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Yeah, this one was very straightforward. No issues.
Russ is eating.
Thank you for participating in today's COVID.
Starving. You guys are killing me.
My name is
Can we drink?
So he was
I do
speaking.
have someone from DGT if you guys have any questions. He's here.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, that's fine.
Anybody have any questions on this one? All right, do I hear a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 169 Parkerville Road, DEP number 290-998?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Watson,
You're muted.
Yeah.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes. Yep. Pasamato.
Yep. All right. So we have 3 notice of intents.
3 notice of intents, and I also have to ratify the emergency cert for 21 Stowe Road, the failed septic that was flowing over too.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
They'll be submitting an RDA, but that was kind of a necessary fix.
It sounded like it was the sewers was flowing on top of the ground.
Yeah, a little disgusting. Okay, so for 28 Granule, I'll pull up what I drafted. It's very straightforward. So just talking about, it's the deck and the grading. There is work within the 20-foot buffer zone to restore previously disturbed areas. And then about the boulder barrier.
Do we have to issue a waiver for the work in the buffer
That can be
zone?
part of the motion, yes.
Okay.
Although it is temporary, it's not permanent, but
We've allowed temporary impacts as long as they restore it, right? So it's when it's a permanent impact that requires a written waiver.
So many rules.
it's never ending. All right, does anyone have anything to add, change?
No.
So is there a motion to issue the order of conditions for 28 Granule Road?
Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Oh, who
Second.
was that?
That was
Sherry?
Judith.
Oh, okay. Judith, second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Watson,
Yes.
Pete.
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes.
Yep.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Okay. And then lot 4 will look very much the same, except it's about a house. Not just a deck, and there's no work within the 20.
Right. Any edits or modifications from anybody? All right, do I hear a motion to accept these conditions, for an order of conditions for lot 4 Granule Road?
So moved.
A second,
Second.
roll call vote?
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yep.
Wittes.
Yep.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Okay. And then
151 Middle.
151 Middle.
The only thing with that one right there, I'd like them to put a double row of siltation barriers alongside the kind of runs on an angle there, but right along the trolley track edge, because that banking is very steep.
Okay.
And down there next to Middle Road, Carl lives there. He probably, just lives down the street a little ways. He knows it's like wet all year.
Yeah, there's always water down there.
Yeah, I mean, every time it rains, it sits water in there for a while. So I'd
And
like to
there
make sure
was-
that we don't have any, construction erosion going down there.
Okay. And then you guys discussed possible.
They had a silk fence would even be better.
The what?
A silk fence. Are they putting wattles or silk? I don't remember. A silk, the silk
Compost
fence.
sock.
Compost sock and maybe, silt fence along with it.
Yeah, silk fence would put a a visible barrier.
Yeah.
Okay.
It needs a couple of things there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any further discussion about more stormwater features in terms of the rain garden, or was that kind of concluded towards the end?
I don't know, I can go either way on that one.
Yeah.
What have we historically done with something that would be that close?
I don't think we've had any sort of hard and fast policy around it. What's your opinion, Sherry?
I want to see the site more, I guess, maybe to determine that, but we don't do a lot of rain gardens in Westboro, so I kind of like that you do them in Southborough because I think they're a nice feature. And it also takes care of stormwater, so I'm kind of for it.
So I'm interested by this because I'm really not sold that that trench drain stone function thing that he keeps selling us really works. I feel like the stone just gets blown away with a snowplow and then you're stuck with kind of this non-functioning thing. So I'd be more inclined to just want the rain garden personally.
Okay. Then let's do it.
All right, so how do you want the condition to read?
I have no idea.
Well, he actually said that he was fine with requesting a rain garden in there. So I would just make that a condition.
Yeah, he's gonna put the rain garden at the end of the channel, right?
Well, he's got to put it where it works, right? Where it's
Yeah.
going to get water. So he's the engineer. That's up to him, in my opinion. I would just say that, as part of the order of conditions, the commission is accepting his offer to install a rain garden for stormwater management on the site.
So rain garden shall be installed at the appropriate, location to manage stormwater on the site.
Yeah.
Yeah, with native plants.
And do be determined by,
Yeah.
design engineering.
Native plantings.
So, and then with final approval by the commission?
Or you.
Okay. All right, I will add those in then.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? I'm gonna lose my laptop here in 5 minutes with a reboot.
So moved.
Yeah. That's with an update, Mark?
Yeah, and it's not letting me postpone it anymore.
Yeah, you'll be waiting for hours for that update.
It's
ugly.
Sherry moved.
A second?
Second.
Watson,
Yeah.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yep.
Passamano.
Yes.
All right, and just the very last thing is to ratify the emergency cert for 21 Stowe Road.
So-
which is Field septic.
I've been asked to give a price on that job.
Oh,
Okay.
So I shall recuse myself, I guess.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was an RDA is to be filed and erosion controls shall be installed and approved prior to construction as denoted on the approved plan, which they submitted. That's been approved by Board of Health.
Okay, so we just have to vote to ratify this?
Yes.
All right, just a roll call vote now.
All right, so Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory, oh, you're abstaining. Wittes,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Trick question there, Melissa, huh?
It throws me off, man. It was bad enough with Ben not being here. I picture you sitting at the table
Yeah.
and I walk through. Okay, because the clerk is requiring original signatures. If you guys are around on Monday, I would love to get some of them for the certificates of compliance and the orders. So just send me an email, text, or, you know, if you'll be around, I'll run it to you. You can come to townhouse. Doesn't matter.
Well, that's annoying, but
I know.
okay.
I know.
I'll be in a hazmat suit.
Okay.
When are you in on Monday?
I'll be there all day, 8 to 5.
Okay.
Okay, I'm losing everybody.
I
I
want
gotta
to see
go.
Mark. I want to see Mark in a hazmat suit.
Let's
You
adjourn.
know when he's coming.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Okay,
Watson,
Yes.
Pete,
Yep.
Guyer,
Yes.
Gregory,
Yes.
Wittes,
Yep.
Pasamato.
yep,
Okay,
Late night.
we're adjourned.
thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.